75 years old, and I still wake up with a little guy saluting me.
It's the Wake Up Call with KB and Andy.
You wanted this, right? You wanted the real deal? That's what this is. Wake up. You're in the middle of it.
You better wake up and listen to what you're saying.
Which is a morning show. Wake up.
What the hell? Wake up, everyone.
I think the first time I have walked either into Grand Park or into this studio in the last week and I haven't already been dripping in sweat. So I think that's a positive. Cooler temps here coming up finally later this week. Both of you are looking at me puzzlingly.
There you go. Well, your mic didn't sound very good.
Oh.
Something was weird.
Something was turned off.
Was that a me
I was like,
thing?
no,
Was that a board thing?
I thought my headphones broke. I'm like, why can't I hear you?
You're good to go. You sound well.
I'm like, the red light's on. I think I'm talking.
What you were saying, it's the first day you haven't walked into camp or the studio dripping with sweat. That's what I think you were trying to say.
Dripping with rain. But a very nice start here to this Thursday morning. No camp for us, no practice for the Colts today. They will be back tomorrow. It's the final morning practice of camp coming up 10 to 11 a.m. out there at Grand Park. Again, the two joint practices with the Cardinals next week. But Andy Sweeney, on this Thursday morning, we unfortunately talk about an injury that I largely think you can't avoid injuries in football. I thought yesterday's incident on the football field was totally avoidable. And I think that is what the bummer is of it when you talk about Josh Downs potentially missing some of the start of the season.
Well, KB, a good morning to you. It's good to see you. I cannot wait to get back out there to Westfield tomorrow, our final day. I'll say this, and I guess I got to be a little bit harsh this morning because, boy, I tell you, I think that was the reaction yesterday. I know kind of around the media and fans that were there, it wasn't happy as Josh Downs goes down, and following Twitter and everything else. You saw it yesterday. We have had some good days out there at Grand Park. I don't mean just you and I mean the Colts have as well. I mean, Anthony Richardson has stayed healthy. Anthony Richardson has shined a little bit. They've got, competition at some places. Liatu Latu looks really good. I mean, there have been positives. They have openly talked about, whether it's making the playoffs, of course, winning the AFC South. And so there have been good days. There have been momentum days. And quite frankly, yesterday, KB, was not one of those days. It was a sad, dreary day that got sadder, that got drearier, if you will, when Josh Downs went down. And I guess the only positive is it happened now and not in a month, not in a month and a half, not where he would miss, a month plus of the regular season. But, the Downs part is one thing. And then the carelessness of Nick Cross. And afterwards, I know Greg Doyle wrote a little bit about this in the Star this morning, and a little bit of the almost, and maybe this is what he is in front of the media, the nonchalant of, we're playing football. And unfortunately, 7-on-7 is not playing real football. He got chewed out by his coach. Shane Steichen talked about it afterwards, but yesterday, not a good day. Josh Downs, I think everybody thought Josh Downs was set to have just a great season, and he's still good.
Ryan Kelly going to join us here coming up. We'll probably play that around 8 o'clock this morning. Caught up with the longest tenured Colt after practice. I know I've probably said this several times throughout camp, but I walked away from that one yesterday, and I was like, man, I can't wait for our listeners to hear that. I thought, and Kelly is easily one of the more candid players on this football team.
He's fantastic.
I probably had the over-under at 2.5. Words that Mark Dykton would have to beep. He certainly hovered right around that.
Yes, yes, he did.
We'll keep you guessing on how many beeps Mark Dykton had to execute here.
He said it so casually, too.
Very casual.
He knew we were recording and not live.
He's a good taped interview because live it can really sneak up. And you know what? He will sneak in a magic word or two.
Sure,
he won't just go casual with you on that. So Ryan Kelly, we'll play that here coming up in a bit. Again,
wouldn't have been my first time scrambling for the dump button in an interview.
No, it certainly would not. Good Thursday morning to you. I'm Kevin Bowen. That is the voice of Mark Dykton. Of course, Andy Sweeney alongside with us. Ryan Kelly and Scott Agnes going to join us here coming up a little bit later. Our Thursday chats with Scott. Again, one final morning practice coming tomorrow at Colts camp. And then they'll play Sunday, and it sounds like the starters will play some. We'll get clarification from Shane Steichen.
Maybe,
I guess, tomorrow.
Maybe.
After practice on that end. On the Olympic front today, it will, and I could be wrong on this. The United States takes on Serbia here in the semifinals coming up at 3 o'clock today. Have they played a minute of second half basketball in the Olympics where the game has been within single digits?
Yeah, I don't feel like they have. I mean, I haven't felt like they were ever going to lose a game, even if they did. I mean,
I know there hasn't been a fourth quarter minute.
Yeah, did like South Sudan get it close for a second there in the second half? I'm trying to remember back. But you never felt like they were going to lose that game.
No, and the weird thing about their first matchup, again, they played Serbia in the exhibition round. I kind of just throw that out. But they also played Serbia in the group stage. It was the first game of the Olympics. For what it's worth, when Nikola Jokic was on the floor, Serbia played the U.S. to even. When Jokic was off the floor, he did not play in that game for 10 minutes. The United States outscored Serbia by 26 points.
That's pretty good.
That's literally the margin.
That's pretty good.
So, Mr. Jokic, get ready.
He's playing 40 minutes,
beer.
baby.
Well, we're not in the hotel room last night. Yes, he will play 40 minutes. And I'm just curious, does any team put game pressure on the U.S.? Because inevitably, and we see this in the NCAA tournament, obviously a ton with number 1 seeds, if you can get to the under 8, the under 4 media timeout, and all of a sudden it's like, wait a minute, this is a 4-point game. I mean, no one needs to double back on old Purdue Fairleigh Dickinson in the second half, but you certainly saw it with Purdue in that one. I am curious, do we see it at all? Is it Serbia today? Does it come Saturday in the gold medal game against France or Germany, or is this going to be an absolute 6-game rout for the United States? Because so far through 4 games,
it's been easy.
That's what it's been.
What do you? Before we get back to Josh Downs, I mean, what do you think? I mean, the narrative is, and I talked about this. Was it yesterday or the day before, that the Serbians have been woeing everyone to sleep, lulling, I should say, everyone to sleep. KB, that they've been the sleepy Serbians, that they've been playing possum. These are sleepy tactics, I think. That's the verbiage that Steve Kerr used.
Could use that for Rosie Bowen here one of these nights.
Well, I mean, how's school going, by the way? What, 2 days in a row?
Well, school good. Bedtime seemingly gets later and later. This is where daylight savings. If I can vote on that, I might vote differently than, hey, keep it late so golf courses can stay open.
Oh boy, I know some people that might fist fight you if you want it to get dark outside. I can tell you that. I know people that are passionate. They've went to Capitol Hill to try to get things changed.
I'm being selfish.
Everyone has been saying, wow, I mean, the Serbians, they've been laying in the weeds. They're going to now open things up against the United States, and Joker will play 40 minutes and everything else. So I guess I'm conditioned to be worried about today's game at 3 o'clock. I guess I'll still be the brash American that isn't. I think we win. Now, you usually have the spread. I'll have you tell the people what that is. But I guess I'm not worried, but everyone is doing everything to condition me to be worried that Serbia is going to have a trick up their sleeve later on today.
Yeah, and again, just to remind people, the South Sudan game that was close, that was in the exhibition round. Germany was close. That was exhibition. I mean, since the Olympics have started, Serbia, South Sudan for the second time, Puerto Rico, and then Brazil, none of these games have been close anywhere, especially in the second half. 16 points. That is your spread for today. Germany's actually a 5-point favorite over France. That first semifinal will be at 11. We did have a couple of more gold medals to Indiana Olympians. We will hit on that here throughout the show. And a hell of a race. That 400-meter win by Quincy Hall yesterday, very Cole Hawker-esque with that close. So you'll get Noah Lyles in the 200-meter today. And again, the U.S. and Serbia on the hardwood coming up this afternoon.
I think for me, going back to Josh Downs, and again, we'll play some Nick Cross sound. We'll play some Shane Steichen sound as we go today. I guess where I am at with this, my main takeaways are about Josh Downs. So number one, I really thought, and I think you did as well, that this guy was going to hit the ground running. It was going to be, 80 catches, 85, 90 catches. I mean, it's that type of production. And we talk about Anthony Gould, who's the rookie. Are we talking about, moving one of the tight ends? I mean, the tight ends right now aren't good enough maybe to be tight ends full-time or to move them inside. I don't know. To me, there aren't any great things you can do, and we can dive into that. But yesterday was a bad day, and I think part of it was avoidable. And Nick Cross has to be better. And that's just the main thing. Nick Cross is not as valuable as Josh Downs. And I know Nick Cross is fighting his ass off, and I get it. He's trying to make this team. But part of it is about him. Part of it is about there are rules during 7-on-7. And, KB, after the game, He goes, well, I'm out there just playing football. And I get what he means, but part of it is, no, you're not playing football. No, you're not, because the rule is not to go to the ground there. The rule is, you're not lighting someone up, and it's 7-on-7. It's not real football. And so now, for me, I guess the last thing would be the Colts now have kind of compiled two big injuries. Samson Ebukam, 9.5 sacks, led the team, an absolute established pass rusher in this league. He goes down, and I know Latu's there, and, yesterday we talked to Coach Ventura, and he talked about how much he loves Tyquan Lewis, and we know Kwity Paye, and he's lost 10, 15 pounds, and so he should be bigger and, or faster, I should say, off the edge, conditioning and everything else, but I don't know. I mean, to me, you've now lost your pass rusher for the entire season, and, you've lost a month. You hope he comes back week 1 or 2 of Josh Downs, and I think you're worried about, a guy that's all about shiftiness and quickness and getting open in the seams and everything else. Now you're in a situation to where, is he going to be hampered in 5 weeks, 6 weeks? Is this going to go the first month? Does it nag him much of the season? So, to me, I'm just worried that they have now not even got to preseason game number 1, and they have stacked 2 sizable injuries. And yesterday, at least to some extent, to some percentage, KB was absolutely avoidable.
Well, it was stupid. Let me start there. I was, I guess, fortunate/unfortunate to have a pretty good view of what took place. And, when Josh Downs makes the catch from Anthony Richardson, it's a 7-on-7 setting, so the field obviously is not too congested. And when Downs made the catch on the little out pattern, both players had their backs turned to me, and Nick Cross had no chance of making a play on the ball. Occasionally you will see, DB certainly has an opportunity to make a play on the ball, and as they should, they have the opportunity to do that, and they can go ahead and dive and try to make an attempt at that. And, sometimes you're going to have a collision. I go back to in May, and again, fans obviously weren't out there for the OTA, but Jalen Jones collided with Michael Pittman Jr., and for several minutes, Michael Pittman Jr. was on the ground. And, I walked away from that hit and thought, that is simply friendly fire. That is just two guys that, in Jalen Jones' case, yes. Is he similar to Nick Cross? Is he trying to fight for a starting job? Sure. But that was a ball that Anthony Richardson threw in the air. It was two guys going up in the air at it, and there was some incidental contact. What happened yesterday was a clear pitch and catch from Richardson to Downs. And again, for anyone that has been at a training camp practice in recent years, right as soon as the ball is snapped, you will have some position coach yell, keep him up, stay up, stay up. I mean, that is yelled every single play. And after Downs makes the catch with his back turned to Nick Cross, Cross goes behind him and tackles him from behind. Like, this was not a, we're blocking each other and it's 5 offensive linemen and 4 defensive linemen and we get tangled up.
It's not a collision on a crossing route, something like that. It's not.
Well, and it wasn't incidental. I mean, it was, I am trying to make a tackle here in a 7-on-7 setting. So, again, avoidable, stupid, all of those things were completely checked. And, when Shane Steichen says we've got to be smarter post-practice, that is, some football coaches would say, we can't be dumb. Because that's exactly what the play was. So I think that is what is so just kicking the you-know-what from the play, because it was completely avoidable by Cross in that moment there. And this is, a third-year guy and his 20th practice of the offseason. Nick Cross is not some 7th-round rookie that, is simply has no idea how an NFL practice works. And Shane Steichen, for what it's worth, he certainly reprimanded Nick Cross right after the play happened.
Yep.
And then later on in practice, he had a one-on-one meeting with Nick Cross. And again, for Shane Steichen to do that, clearly he was upset with the play. So that obviously is one aspect of it. Then the other is, if you look at the timetable, 4 to 6 weeks, literally 4 weeks from today, September 8th is your opener. I think technically when you look at the calendar, it's about 4.5 weeks. So if he misses 4 weeks, that would be the Wednesday of the Texans week, the season opener. He'd get back to practice theoretically, and he would have 3 practice days to get ready. If you go to 5 weeks, he'd miss 1 game. If you go 6 weeks, he'd miss 2 games. That's where you're at. We know that high ankle sprains can linger, and we know that Josh Downs, I would say, is even more of a target than Michael Pittman Jr.
Yeah, I would agree.
In the eyes of Anthony Richardson. It actually crossed my mind, and this is kind of eerie. Downs is absolutely cooking dudes on the practice field yesterday. right before the injury occurred, probably, 3 or 4 plays, I thought to myself, man, Josh Downs might lead this team in catches. Like, he's having that impression on me. And again, it doesn't sound like the injury is beyond serious, but if he misses a couple games and or this lingers, it obviously is a huge deal for a shifty, guy that gets in and out of his breaks. Certainly high ankle sprain for an offensive lineman versus a wideout can be different. So I think that kind of adds to the nature of what you have here with Josh Downs' injury.
You mentioned Shane Steichen. This is 9 seconds. Here's what Shane Steichen had to say yesterday about the entire play.
Yeah, I mean, we got to be smart. I mean, we're competing like crazy, but we got to stay off the ground, and we can't go down. That's the bottom line.
I find myself, you know what I find myself?
Shane Steichen lingo,
that's pretty good.
That was a stupid play, and we cannot have it. And again, for those that maybe are not out at Grand Park every day, I cannot reiterate to you enough. Shane Steichen's emotion as soon as that play happened told you everything you needed to know. And as soon as Nick Cross put his arms around Josh Downs, I thought, damn, what's he doing? That was my initial thought. And then you see Downs kind of just crippled to the ground, and then he can't put any weight on his lower body. And you think to myself, what in the,
what are we doing here?
I mean,
why?
The 9 practices they've had at Grand Park, do you occasionally get guys that do take players to the ground? I'd say in that sort of moment, open field, 7-on-7, you might get 1 to 2 a practice. When you do get them, it's guys facing each other that might just, a shoulder bump, or again, go back to the Jalen Jones, Michael Pittman Jr. play from May, 2 guys just going up in the air and competing at it. This was an already completed ball and a dude tackling him from behind. You just, in 2024 NFL training camps, you don't see this.
Yeah, that's why it's BS after the game, Nick Cross saying, well, we're just playing football. You're not. I mean, you're playing 7-on-7. You're playing 2-hand touch. You're scrimmaging. I don't know what to tell you. It's not football. What you're going to do, in September, that's going to be football. Hell, if you're playing out there for the first preseason game on Sunday, it's going to bother you. I think for me, this entire situation irks me. By the way, can I ask you something? And you might not know the answer to this. Was Nick Cross supposed to talk with the media yesterday? Was that planned before the play?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I thought. I mean, that's just bad luck for him, is it not? It's the first thing I thought. I go, usually these guys are scheduled, and he was scheduled to meet anyway, and then Nick Cross goes up there and mumbles through 3 minutes. Listen, football's dangerous enough. Things are going to happen. This team has to worry about, its quarterback, Anthony Richardson. They got to worry about other things. They got to worry about, we did an indispensable list three weeks ago, KB. They got to worry about those guys. You don't need carelessness and stupidity. And I feel that's what irks me the most is that you got that. And you got that against a player who is set to have such a big season. Yesterday, we had the conversation with Coach Venturi, and what did he call Josh Downs? One of his ambient guys? One of his guys that keeps you up at night, right? I mean, there's not many guys on each NFL team, and the Colts have a few of them, and Josh Downs is one of them. So I'm really disappointed in yesterday. And, KB, you've talked about this. This team, it's been, since the French and Indian War, the last time this team has won game 1. And now this just puts,
well, it's not just that. It's the
hard,
opponent week 1. It's Houston in your own building.
And then it's Green Bay, right? And then it's Green Bay right after that. You hope he's back for game 1, but it's hard to believe he will be back. Those high ankle sprains are tricky, man. And again, the only positive here is the timing. That this didn't happen week 2, and suddenly he's not back to week 7 or week 8 or whatever it may be. You do have time. If he misses a game or 2, it's not the end of the world, I guess. But, boy, I tell you, knowing how close the AFC South is probably going to be, a game or 2 costs you. It cost you last year, and you don't want it to cost you this year as well.
That was a solid historical reference by you, by the way. You snuck that in there. The French and Indian War connection.
Very
solid. That was very well done.
I stole that from somebody.
I expect the Versailles Treaty to make an appearance at some point, too.
By the way, this table tennis behind you, the ping pong, was fantastic. You were talking to Josh Downs, and I could not stop watching it. The guy from France is called LeBrun.
Really?
Instead of LeBron, it's a UN
Didn't they have a
at
soccer
the end.
player, or was that a Belgium guy that I'm thinking of?
LeBron.
On that end.
I was like, look at this guy.
Now
Just one
currently
more thing
looks
to
like
add on the Downs note. Ian Rappaport said 4 to 6 weeks. While high ankle sprains can be tricky, the hope is the recovery time is on the shorter
Sure.
end. It apparently looked bad, and I would agree. It certainly looked bad, but the diagnosis wasn't worst case.
Okay.
Currently
well,
looks like they're playing with the stuff that like was left over at gym class. There's a hula hoop. There's like a ball. Like, hey, play with this.
What's this called?
I don't know what this is.
Is this what we've got this morning, Mark? This is awful.
It is. There's a woman who is throwing a ball of some kind, a beach ball in the air, and she's doing all sorts of dances around it. I'm sure it's very skillful, just not for us.
I know we're at the end of the
Let me see what
week,
else we
but
have.
damn, we got to find something else here on this
gotta
Thursday
have
morning.
Something. Noah Lyles is today, isn't he?
Yeah,
I think he is.
2:30, I believe, for Noah Lyles trying to go with the double.
He was second in the semis yesterday. It's like the first time, again, since the French and Indian War, he's been second in that race. So the 200 is today. So obviously a lot with the Josh Downs stuff coming up at 8 o'clock. Our conversation with Ryan Kelly. We went football, and of course his battle the last, year and a half or so off the field. We'll dive into that. Scott Agnes at 8:30. Olympic update, sound from Colts training camp yesterday. We'll get into it next. Your morning check down. It's coming up next on this Thursday. 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
Down. Brought to you by Butler Bulldogs Basketball. Season tickets are on sale now. Order by August 1st for your shot at the best seats in Hinkle Fieldhouse. Visit butlersports.com/buy tickets.
He is the longest tenured Colt. He is always candid and makes Mark Dykton hit the dump button a couple times. Ryan Kelly going to join us here coming up at 8 o'clock. Let's go ahead and hit a morning check down before that.
Yeah, let's start with the Colts. Obviously, whenever we have sound of the Colts from training camp, we're going to play that. Let's start with Shane Steichen. Last segment, you heard Shane Steichen's reaction to the play that got Josh Downs injured. Now what? I think that's the question. Who kind of moves in the slot? Is it a guy like Anthony Gould? Can they move in other guys? Shane Steichen was asked about it yesterday. Here's what he had to say.
Josh is a hell of a football player, but those guys are interchangeable. I mean, you can put Pitt inside there. It just depends, right? What kind of route combination we're doing. You know, you can put anybody you want there in that slot position.
Yeah, I'm not sure anybody will see exactly what they do preseason game number 1 coming up on Sunday. Now, as for Nick Cross, the target's been on his back, given what happened yesterday. He had 2 short clips. These are short clips on the Downs injury. The first one, they're competing, and that's what happens when you compete.
I mean, we playing football, we competing. So, I mean, Josh, my guy, I love that boy to death. So, I mean, we competing. It's unfortunate, you know, and I got to go see what's up with him when I go inside.
You want one more? Let me give you one more. Here's Josh. Here's Nick Cross. Never want to hurt a teammate.
We competing. I mean, never want to get your teammates hurt and everything like that. You know, like I said, Josh is my guy, so.
That's basically all that Nick Cross said yesterday about the injury.
Yeah, fair to say remorse was lacking, I would say, from Nick Cross yesterday. Again, he just happened to be meeting the media of all the days. Weirdly enough, it was yesterday on that. And I do want to get more into, okay, let's go back to the Steichen clip. If Downs is out to start the season, what does that look like? Because, you know, with the tight end position being the lack of emergence at the top of the depth chart, when we talk security blankets for Anthony Richardson, it is Josh Downs first. And so, again, how does that look? I want to get more into that. I think, you know, kind of giving my thoughts on Nick Cross, and we'll certainly do that at different points in the show today, but we'll do that here coming up in a bit. Yesterday was probably the longest full padded practice of camp for the Colts. Wesley French, a guy that has started a little bit here in spot duty in recent years. He did injure his ankle a few days ago, out for the year. So Danny Pinter, the Ball State product, Tanner Bornaliti, the 4th-round pick out of Wisconsin, those two will compete for that backup center job. All right, Mark Dykton, go ahead and cue us up. Again, yesterday.
Last couple days for this, man.
The local flavor. How about in the grappling room? It was Sarah Hildebrandt winning the gold medal, the Penn High School product. Unbelievable drama for her yesterday. She is informed that her opponent has failed to make weight. The Indian woman literally had to cut her hair yesterday to try and make weight.
Did she really?
They
She cut her hair?
she missed weight by the equivalent of a deck of cards.
Oh, well.
So,
you know what? I don't feel sorry for you. You're there for the Olympics for one reason, to make weight.
Hey, you guys
right?
got on me earlier this week for describing the weight of Sarah Hildebrandt's opponent earlier.
You said she had a big trunk, I believe, is what
so
you said.
Sarah then thinks she's won gold for like an hour and then is informed, no, you're going to have to wrestle the semifinal loser.
That's ridiculous.
And so she wrestles this girl from Cuba, luckily won that. So Tokyo, she won bronze and just a crushing loss in the semifinals. She wins gold yesterday in the 110-pound division, the Penn High School product. Chloe Dygert adds to her decorated career. Really dominant performance by the USA women in the team pursuit. That is cycling. So a bronze individually for her and a gold yesterday in the team. Again, we mentioned earlier Quincy Hall, that 400-meter close.
Dude, that's unbelievable.
Hell of a comeback.
He was down by
race.
He was down by more than a car length.
Well,
like he was down by a sedan and a half.
The difference between him and Cole Hawker is just like when you watch them race, like visibly, Hawker looked like he still had something left.
Right.
You watch Hall and he looks just
done,
dead with about 100 meters to go, and yet found a different gear to win that one. USA women in basketball, they advanced to take on Australia in the semis.
This one got close. It got close.
Did it get close?
Yeah, I mean, they got it under 10. Yeah, in the fourth quarter, but it was a 14-point win. Asia Wilson, 20 points.
Gotcha.
Dinah Taurasi did score 3 points.
11:30 on Friday for that. Again, the men's basketball in the semis today. That will be a 3 o'clock tip against Serbia. Other things of note today, Andy mentioned earlier, Noah Lyles in the 200-meter final coming up at 2:30. Women's volleyball indoor in the semis. That is coming up at 10 a.m.
Yeah, just to add one more thing to the Olympics, no medal for Team USA in beach volleyball for the first time ever. How about that? I don't know if you followed that at all. I know I'm giving only the negative stats to the Olympics, but we didn't win in beach volleyball.
Is that men
what are we
and
doing?
women?
We lost to Qatar yesterday.
Really?
Or Qatar. Do we ever figure out how we were going to say that? That's who we lost to yesterday.
Did I hear?
Come
did
on.
I hear Rowdy Gaines correct? He was on with Jake and Jimmy earlier this week. He thinks Lily King could race in 2028.
Interesting. No, I did not hear that. Wow.
It is
I mean,
interesting.
she
when
said this is the end, basically,
think
hasn't
about,
she?
LA as a host site. How many Americans will see how the French athletes have been absolutely showered with praise and
Right.
just cheers, frankly.
Right, I want some of that.
In Paris, will you have some United States athletes that, were planning to hang it up? Will they do that again 2028 in LA?
All right, so there's the Olympic update again, 3 o'clock today for the men's basketball team. Quickly, Major League Baseball, Reds lose. Finally, the red-hot Reds lose to the Marlins 6-4. Cubs 8-2 over the Twins. Cardinals 5-2 over the Rays. Indianapolis Indians 4-3 winners there in Nashville. And then the only other thing I had, there's a Pittsburgh radio guy, I believe it's Andrew Fittipaldi, I believe is how you say his name. I mean, he's downright reporting that the Steelers are going to lock in by the end of the week Brandon Ayuk. Like he is confident. Hey, this is going to get done by the end of the week. The parameters are there. They're just working out minor details. So look out for Brandon Ayuk if he were to go anywhere. If he goes to the Steelers, and again, fortifying the AFC even more with another superstar type player.
Colts Steelers Week 4 at Lucas Oil Stadium this season. One baseball note: Tucker Barnhart. I know he was on with John yesterday, signing that minor league contract with the Reds. So it sounds like he'll be in Louisville here early on. For what it's worth, Louisville does play at Victory Field coming up here to end the month of August. So that would be pretty nice for Tucker to play in his own backyard. But he made it pretty clear to John he wants that 10 years. And to get to that 10-year mark needs to be up at the major league level. I think he said 22 days.
22 days. That was a good interview, by the way.
So we'll see if Tucker Barnhart can accomplish that. And shout out to Pacer legend Jeremy Lamb.
There he goes. What, 10 years or more?
Retiring from, it sounds about right.
About a decade in the league.
Retiring from the NBA. He actually, I think, had like a little bit of a better Pacer career than I think people believe. Was here for about 2.5 years and then off to Sacramento in that trade. He was maybe the only dude that actually shot it well in that 2011 national title game between Butler and UConn.
I was going to say no one remembers much about his NBA career. People only remember him with a UConn jersey on, or at least I mostly remember him with the UConn.
Was he drafted by the Bobcats?
I want to say you're right in that at one point he was a Bobcat.
Maybe a Thunder for a minute.
I think he absolutely was in Oklahoma City. All right, good stuff. There's your morning check down. Reminder coming up at 8 o'clock for our conversation yesterday with Ryan Kelly. It's a lot of fun. We'll dive into that. But after the break, like KB mentioned, if Josh Downs happens to be out week 1, replacing him will look like what? We'll dive into that next. It's a Thursday right here, 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
It's the Wake Up Call with KB and Andy on 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Colts center Ryan Kelly going to join us here coming up at 8 o'clock. Looking forward to that combo with him. We talked a lot in the opening segment about, again, to me, the stupidity and the avoidable nature to Nick Cross's tackle on Josh Downs yesterday that has caused a high ankle sprain for Downs. His absence could be into the start of the regular season, 4 to 6 weeks. In Rappaport of NFL Network did mention there is some optimism it could be on the earlier side of that timeline, which, again, 4 weeks from today would put you in that practice week of the season opener against Houston. So it's going to be certainly very monitor the calendar, monitor the updates for Josh Downs. Andy Sweeney, let's say he does miss time. Where do you think the Colts will turn?
Boy, I tell you what, the first thing I thought of was, can you move Pittman a little bit inside to where maybe you have Alec Pierce and A.D. Mitchell on the field? And the answer to that is I don't know. We'll see exactly kind of what they do. They're going to have to tip their hand in some sort of way, right? Whether that be in a few practices, preseason games, the scrimmages that are coming up. I guess for me, I want to see Anthony Gould. Is that wrong of me? I mean, I know it's like, well, maybe a tight end. Maybe you can move Granson in there. But for me, I don't need to see more tight ends. I don't need to see more of the Colts tight ends on the field unless they're going to upgrade. Maybe if they had Brock Bowers, that would be a conversation. So, to me, let's see what Anthony Gould has. I know they like his speed. Let's see what he's got and kind of go from there. What do you think they do?
Well, let's start here with Downs. Remember our interview with him, a couple weeks ago, and you hear how much the staff pushed him to play in that Germany game last year. You listen to Downs tell Reggie Wayne, Reggie said to him, man, you look more explosive this year. And Downs is like, well, I feel like I'm healthier.
Right.
And I'll reiterate what I said to open up the show of given your tight end depth chart, and I do think there is a part of just Richardson and Downs are in the same draft class. They were the roommates, very early on in their, rookie offseason with the Colts. I think he trusts Josh Downs more than any other pass catcher on the team.
I would totally agree with you.
So I think that's what really, again, kind of stings to this.
They just can't get all of these guys on the damn field at the same time, right? I mean, they had 8-9 practices where they were able to do that, KB. It's killing me.
Right. I mean, to be fair, I think every team right now probably has one or two somewhat notable injuries. I don't think this is that out of the norm here for NFL teams. But, in terms of slot, I think in kind of like a weekly setting, like Michael Pittman Jr., as Shane Steichen mentioned yesterday, that kind of makes sense. Now, what that does do is it thrusts Alec Pierce and A.D. Mitchell into bigger roles. How does that look if you are playing them, extensively out there? Obviously, Pittman Jr., I think Rick Ventura even mentioned it to us yesterday. He's kind of a hybrid tight end at times. He's more of an underneath guy. Obviously, from a physicality standpoint, he's much different than Josh Downs. There's no Isaiah McKenzie on the roster. And I know a lot of people, you can insert your jokes here about Isaiah McKenzie, but what I'm getting at is there's no kind of veteran that you would turn to in this case. You bring up Anthony Gould. Again, for those unfamiliar with him, he was the 5th-round pick out of Oregon State. When he was drafted, the thought was this pick is largely because the new kick return rule is in place here in 2024. He certainly made some plays offensively at Oregon State. It's kind of funny when you watch him with Joe Flacco, he's mainly getting second-team looks. The plays he makes are big plays, well down the field. I don't look at him, or at least I haven't seen a ton of the, safety valve, 3rd and 5, put my foot in the ground, and I'm Wes Welker, Julian Edelman for 6 or 7, which is kind of what Downs is. So yesterday when the play happened, and Downs, barely is putting any weight on that ankle and gets helped off the field, there was Gould that went in. So I am anxious to see him kind of for the next several weeks now. Can he show a little bit more of the down stuff? Again, be reliable, be more underneath. Because honestly, I think Gould's got some big play potential. And I think I've mentioned it before in the show. I could see a couple weeks go by and all of a sudden Anthony Gould's barely played on offense and then Shane Steichen throws him in the huddle. And because the dude's 5'8", the defense doesn't recognize him, and boom, you take a shot with him over the top. So I do think some combination of you could move Pittman around, but if you want to keep Pittman as that outside wideout, I do think Gould. I don't want people to think all of a sudden A.D. Mitchell or Alec Pierce will be lining up in the slot.
You're just not going to throw
soon.
A.D. Mitchell in the slot. That's just not going to happen.
I don't see the Colts doing that.
No, I don't think that's going to happen either. Let me ask you this. I'll ask you the question that Greg Dola wrote about this morning. Are the Colts wide receivers good enough? I mean, he says no, and he didn't think so before Josh Downs. I never viewed the Colts wide receivers in that light until after the Josh Downs injury, just because I thought, Pittman is very good. We've had the argument about what he is. Is he a 1A? Is he a 1B? Regardless, he's very good. And then you combine that with Josh Downs, who I thought was going to be very good this season. And then you had kind of fighting for that third wide receiver spot, either who I think is a solid pro in Alec Pierce or the guy from college in A.D. Mitchell who had huge upside. And I don't know. I mean, to me, I would evaluate the position on kind of those guys, right? I mean, once you get to wide receiver 4 and wide receiver 5, everyone is going to have a guy who might be kind of a fringe roster guy. Did you make anything of that? Because, now, the argument of adding someone else, adding someone not named Laquan Treadwell, who's got 4 catches in 3 years or whatever, whatever ridiculous number that was. I had just not seen the Colts. I had not viewed their wide receivers through the prism of this is not good enough. And now with Josh Downs, it is certainly not good enough. Listen, if he's out, it's a big deal. But I don't look at, I look at other positions as something that could hurt them more than the wide receiver. That's just me, I guess.
I think in recent years, in my opinion, they've been in the basement in the NFL of NFL wideout groups. They might be on the middle floor. I don't think they're upstairs by any means.
I think that's fair. I mean,
I don't
they're better than the Bills.
I don't think they're in the penthouse. So that's how kind of I view the wideout group. Now, in terms of making a roster move, when Ebicom went down, okay, again, do you make an outside of the building move? With Ebicom down, you had 2 first-round picks and 2 second-round picks behind him. And by the way, Dayo Odeyingbo did return to practice yesterday. He's been dealing with a calf injury for about a week plus. He'll certainly factor in to some reps there. I don't think they will go outside the building of note here. Again, Downs' injury, he literally could be back for week 1.
He could be.
Now,
right.
Let's say it's the back end of that. Okay, he misses a couple of weeks. I still don't think you would put him on an injured reserve or, anything like that where he would miss substantial time on that end, assuming it's the injury that is being reported right now. This is probably as bad as it sounds, it's good news for Anthony Gould, and it's probably good news for a guy like Ashton Dulin and just kind of rounding out that 6-man wideout group. But again, as long as Downs is going to play some point in September, I don't think you all of a sudden need to do anything substantially on that end.
Ryan Kelly coming up in 10 minutes. I wanted to ask you this, and I don't know the answer to this, so I'm going to rely on you a little bit. I'll give you my opinion, but I want a little bit more information. I thought after practice, Nick Cross's press conference did not help things. And in fact, I think it kind of poured a little bit of gasoline, just a little bit on it. And I don't know if he meant it. I don't know if he was not reading the room. I don't know if he's like, yo, guys, I'm playing football. Yeah, I tackled him. Things happen. Bleep happens. I don't know if there is some embarrassment. I mean, no, he knows everyone's watching him get ripped by Shane Steichen and what the conversation is. I don't know if he's just not a guy who is, really ever in front of the media. He'll be in front of the media one time in training camp, and then it'll be you guys surrounding him, for preseason games and regular season games. You could help me perhaps a little bit with the Nick Cross stuff. But, when Cross comes out and says, I was just playing football. We were just competing. He was asked by, I think it was was it our guy JB? Was it James Boyd who asked him, hey, would you do it again? If you had it over, would you do it again? And it just seemed like he was a little nonchalant. And I don't know if he didn't feel bad, but, at least right afterwards, he was not remorseful. I mean, Josh Downs is one of the biggest players on this team. And I thought Nick Cross did not help himself at all. Is that the kind of interview, KB, he is? Do you have any opinion on that? Because, I found myself afterwards kind of exasperated with, does this guy not get, I know he knows he's fighting for a starting spot, but the guy he just injured and got ripped on by the coach, is one of the top 6 or 7 most important players on the football field.
Yeah, and obviously,
come on.
Downs is Downs. But, like, even if you separate Downs, let's say that was Anthony Gould, it still was
It's still
stupid play in a 7-on-7 setting that has no business happening in today's day and age of training camp. Maybe 20, 30 years ago, those types of tackles happen. But for those that, and again, unfortunately, I had a great view of it, Josh Downs clearly makes a catch from Anthony Richardson. This was not like Cross has a chance to make a play on the ball, and he goes over the top of Downs, and just incidentally, there's some contact there, and Downs falls to the ground. This was a pitch and a catch and an outright tackle from behind. Honestly, it had a little bit of the, we're kind of seeing some of that hip drop tackle.
Well, I was going to ask you if that's what it was.
It had a little bit of that to it. And again, I don't want, obviously the Colts aren't going to tweet out the video. We're not allowed to take videos of 11-on-11, 7-on-7 sessions. So we're probably not going to get video of it. But from behind, it had one of those things where as Cross is jumping on Downs and bringing him to the ground, I had an audible, ooh, like.
Right.
A, that shouldn't be happening.
Right.
B, you really hope Josh Downs gets up from this.
You hope he gets up immediately, and then he doesn't. It looked bad.
That is what my thoughts were. And, again, you have to evaluate Shane Steichen based off how Shane Steichen handles press conferences. And first off, he was visibly pissed at Nick Cross right after the play happened. Something to the effect of, we don't bring guys to the ground. Like, that sort of yelling, very loud, et cetera, et cetera. And for anyone that's been at a Grand Park practice, you can hear coaches daily, every single rep, 11-on-11, 7-on-7, keep them up, stay up. And this is a 7-on-7 play in the middle of the field. Typically you don't need to yell that. It's just two-hand touch. Again, it's 7-on-7. You do not, the Colts, even with their third stringers, they have not had outright tackling to the ground periods here in camp. You occasionally will see that, from the rookies or the undrafted guys, and the Colts have not had that at all. So, I don't use this word lightly. It was a stupid play with little to no remorse post-practice.
Yeah.
I don't say that, I'm not this like hot take central, here I am, just ripping players constantly. Football is, injuries are impossible to avoid 90-some% of the time. In a training camp 7-on-7 practice, they are avoidable. And I don't know, does Nick Cross feel in the pressure of earning a starting job?
Well, he has
here's
to be.
An opportunity
to be
somewhat, whatever, make contact, and I'm going to do that. Maybe he felt that in that moment, but there's just no way around it. It was flat out stupid.
So was there were they chirping at each other anytime beforehand?
Not at all.
It wasn't like there was any malice behind it.
Not at all.
No.
This was just a 7-on-7. Again, for those out there, I think the 7-on-7 reps are a little even more dialed back than the 11-on-11. And, picture a slot wide out making an out pattern. Welker, Edelman, insert your slot guys here. Richardson had completed the ball to Downs. The ball was completed.
Yeah,
there
the
was
play's over.
no, this is 50-50. It's a fade pattern. That's my ball just as much as it's your ball. There was none of that. And I think the worst part was it's the tackle from behind. And, just think about that. We all see it in the NFL. When you bring ball carriers or pass catchers down from behind, that lower body, it really constricts itself very quickly into some awkward position. You can't brace yourself for any of that.
It's worst case scenario. And they're lucky it's not worse.
And, again, Ian Rappaport mentioned it, and I know he wasn't out there, but clearly he's getting intel from people that were out there. For people that were out there, it looked bad. And Downs was visibly frustrated beyond belief, and Shane Steichen clearly felt the need to go at Nick Cross a little bit there on the practice field. And again, that is not something Shane Steichen does. There are moments in practice where guys do hit and guys do throw their shoulder into players. Steichen is not one that is in there every single time saying, break it up or things like that. He lets a little bit of the physicality go, but this was, again, just an outright tackle from behind, and I thought Shane had every right to react in the manner that he did.
We'll keep the conversation going with Josh Downs. Coming up next, what does he think of this team? And, of course, all the family, heartbreak and triumph he's had off the field. Our conversation with Ryan Kelly, it's coming up next on this Thursday, right here, 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
The Wake Up Call with KB and Andy on 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
It's an off day from Colts camp. We'll be back out there tomorrow. Final practice of the week. Much more on the Josh Downs front. Someone asked me during the break, I think it was Steven right here, should this jeopardize Nick Cross's future with the Colts? Roster cuts, for what it's worth, about 2.5 weeks away. I think it's a fair question to be asked.
It is.
We'll give an answer here coming up in a bit. But let's go ahead and hit up Ryan Kelly. We did this yesterday after Colts practice. He is the longest tenured Colt, as you'll hear me say in just a few minutes. Ryan Kelly, he joined us after practice. We'll play that right now. We are back here at Grand Park, day 9 in full pads. The center of the Indianapolis Colts just wrapped up practice. That would be the one and only Ryan Kelly. Badge of honor, longest tenured Colt.
Yeah, man.
Wear that proudly.
I mean, to be in one place for going on 9 years is, not something I thought I'd, necessarily be doing when I first got in the league. But I tell the guys, it's, a lot of it is, the Colts have been very good to me. I mean, they've trusted me, and I've made it through a GM change, 3-4 head coaches, and a bunch of O-line coaches. And to be somewhere for this long is awesome. But I think it's also, it doesn't come naturally. It doesn't come without a lot of hard work. And certainly I've had a lot of adversity in my life, in my career, and just keep pushing through and try to be the best leader I can. And, I think that the Colts hopefully see that as something that they value.
Before your arrival, it was a revolving door at center. Since your arrival, it's been a revolving door behind you at quarterback.
Yeah.
Can you name the quarterbacks in order?
Oh, yeah, easily. Andrew in 16. It was Tolzien in 17 for the first half. Then Jacoby, who just got signed 3 weeks before that. 18 was Andrew all the way through. 19 was Jacoby and Brian Hoyer. 20 was Rivers. I think Rivers played the entire season. I don't think he missed any games or any snaps. 21, Carson and Sam Ellinger. I think Ellinger was there in 20 and 21, I think. Anyways, Carson played the entire season in 21. 22, so we get interesting. So getting Matt Ryan,
sure.
Sam Ellinger, Nick Foles. 23, Anthony Richardson to start, Gardner Minshew behind, and then now
look
Anthony
at
Richardson
that.
again.
It's unbelievable.
I think KB, you were skeptical whether he could do that or not.
This is a smart human being.
Most guys, people don't even remember that Tolzien was the starter in 2017 for the first half.
That's the one
That is a game to forget out there in LA. Very impressive.
Well,
Ryan
Anthony
Kelly.
Richardson, obviously, hopefully he takes over this year and he runs with it. And there's another quarterback that you're protecting. The feel, what you guys could be around camp, how would you categorize that through 9 practices?
I mean, I think it starts back in OTAs. Well, it really started 2 years ago when Tony first got here. I talked about this last year, and I'm just going to revisit it quickly because I think it's something you have to build on something, right? And it's after the 22 season, nobody thinks we're any good. Terrible O-line, overpaid, this, that, and the other. And Tony comes in, day one, nothing about football, right? It's all about, talking about relationships. That's the only way you can build something on the field is if you build it off the field. I think it started there. It worked all the way through last year. Going into OTAs this year, same new guys or the same faces in the room. New guys come in, right? And you just keep building, right? You're supposed to be better than the next day, better than the year before. And now we come out here for training camp and we're fighting and scratching, and the communication's at a much higher level, right? We're not day one anymore. We're way past that, and so I think that the ceiling of where this team could go, and I think that ultimately, if you look at every great team, the offensive line leads that team, right? And it's the problems start with the offensive line. We got to figure them out, because if we don't figure them out, no one's figuring them out for us. You know what I mean? So I think that's a big thing. It's a big responsibility, but it comes with the territory. You might have just answered it there. And again, Ryan Kelly's with us here live at Colts training camp, but it almost just seems like it was all off the field, for lack of a better phrase, 2022 to 2023. Just like your group needing to come together. Is it more like just a, kumbaya type of, hey, we all got to band together, we play as a fist, not as individual figure, like stuff like that? Is that really what it was, 2022 to 2023? I mean, I think you look at the 22 season. I think we all try to forget that season, right? I mean, it's just not a whole lot of good in that season. But I think that I'm not going to speak for any other group except for offensive line and our offensive line coach. But when Tony came in, it was never looked at us like you guys are not good enough to play or not good enough to be a great offensive line in this league or the best offensive line in this league. It was like, how do I get you guys to believe that that's who you are, right? And I think that when you have a coach that believes in you, holds the standard, it encourages you when you do well. I think it helps guys to go out there. And offensive line, we're always the hardest critiquers on ourselves. I mean, it's just who we are, right? Like, last one to get praised, first one to get on. That's kind of the way it goes. But I think when you have an offensive line coach who really empowers you to go play well and encourages you and loves you and he has your back, I mean, it's a great feeling. I think that's what this kind of group needed.
Harder to block Grover or Buck?
I mean, depending on the situation. I mean, it's Buck in space, not a whole lot of fun. Grover nose to nose, also not a whole lot of fun when he knows the snap count. I mean, so it's those guys are so different in their techniques. I think it's a great thing for us. And ultimately, our defense is such a penetrating defense. It makes everything harder, right? It's the hardest you're going to do is in practice against our guys because they don't read. They're penetrating, so your footwork's got to be great. Your timing's got to be great. Combinations have to be awesome. And then, at the same time, they're also moving. So, Buck's coming inside. He's got long arms. He can do power, swim. Grover's going to bull right through you, or he's going to give you a club over. So, I mean, those guys are very dynamic in that they're so different, but they also have great skill sets in their own regard.
Ryan Kelly with us here. It's a Thursday on the Fan. I was going to ask you about the defensive line. You got into it. Latu, I want you to talk about him, but also how good do you think that unit can be that you've been up against all camp?
Yeah, I mean, they have a great new defensive line coach. I think that they've added some great pieces. I mean, Quiddy looks really great. Unfortunately, we lost Sampson, last week. So that's a big hurt. But I think the depth of our room and the depth of the D-line room, I don't think I've ever seen it so deep, right? And usually it's the starting five, and you've got a couple players who can play behind them, and most teams have similar rooms, right? And I think that for the first time, our offensive line room, the defensive line room is as stacked as you can go. And they've done a great job of, I think, coming together. I think that that defensive line obviously sets the tempo for that defense. The front seven does, and so do we. And so going against them every single day makes us better. I mean, Latu, I think that the ceiling's obviously as high as he can go. I mean, he's obviously got a million people in his ear coaching him up, and I know being in that same situation, first round draft pick, you just got to figure it out for yourself, man. I mean, you have to go through an entire year of playing the game where you're not playing an elite player every other 4 games. It's going to be every single week, right? And so you got to kind of figure it out for your own there. But they look great. Done a great job so far this camp.
He was the 18th overall pick back in the day. Ryan Kelly, longest tenured Colt, with us here live at Grand Park. You said this on day one. You've gotten the vibe from the Colts. No contract extension. Is that still the case, you believe, here?
Yeah, no early contract extension. So, I mean, I think it's something they want to look at the end of the year, but something that we broached them with, and they didn't want to do one early, so it is what it is.
Do you want to play X amount of years, or is this a year-by-year status at this point of your career? How do you look at the rest of your career playing out?
Yeah, I think I've always wanted to play 10 years. That was always like my number, like at least 10. And I think as you get older, right, you look at the team as a whole, as where you're going as a team, and I think you look at Shane, you look at the youth of our offense, the youth of our team, and it's something we want to be a part of. I mean, like last year, you're a play away from making the playoffs, and we had a really great team, even though our starting franchise quarterback, wasn't even a part of it, right? And I think you want to be a part of something great, and I think that this team's headed, for the first time in my career, we've had consistency at the quarterback from one year to the next, and it's a lot of the same guys coming back. It's fun to come back to work every single day with a new staff, and it's something I want to be a part of. It's something I want to finish my career with.
Ryan Kelly with us here on the Fan on this Thursday. That game ends last year against Houston the way it did. That season was quite the season. You could say it was maybe some people thought you guys overachieved, but at the end, you're right there, right? You didn't have Anthony much of the season. When you got kind of taking your pads off and, kind of letting out a breath after that game, what's going through your mind knowing how close you guys were to the playoffs?
I mean, I kind of think about it. I don't know if you remember the 19 season, but the 19 season, Andrew retires right before the season. Nobody expects us to be any good. We go to Kansas City on Sunday night, run the ball for 200 yards and win, right? And it's like we had a couple of those games that year. And last year, I mean, we were a great team. And we should have beat the Browns. I mean, there's so many games you should have, would have, could have, right? But I thought we were taking steps in the right direction. Outside of a couple of games that we didn't really play our greatest, I thought we were always in the hunt. We were always in, playoff contention. And I think it's last year, I don't think nobody wanted the season to end. I mean, that was 22, couldn't get the season to end fast enough, right? I mean, and the last year, you want to keep playing because you're having so much fun doing it.
It was an empty feeling. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what it was.
100%. And then you just never know. You never know when it's going to be your last. That team will never be the same after that moment, right? And so you just never know how fast this game can go, right? So it's just the saddest part is you want to keep going. You want to keep doing it. And you don't have the option to anymore.
Just another couple minutes here with Ryan Kelly, and again, we are live here at Grand Park as we do this interview. Emma over our shoulder, your two young boys over our shoulder as well. I'll remember you chatting with us a few years ago, and I thought it was one of the more vulnerable interviews an athlete has ever done with us. And I believe at the time, I want to say Emma had maybe already delivered the boys, unbeknownst to us. I think you had kind of kept that information in. If you don't mind, could you walk us through that camp and that just process of your life that, again, unbeknownst to us and so many fans, you didn't know, and now what life is like with these two running around?
Yeah, I mean, so we were in Nashville. I mean, I'll make the story short. We were in Nashville for a wedding about a month before training camp started. My wife goes into emergency labor with the boys. They come 27 weeks delivered at 27 weeks, 0 days. So they were 13 weeks early, 2 pounds each, right to the NICU. I got to find an Airbnb because we don't know how long we're going to be here in Nashville now. We're trying to move houses in Indianapolis. I got to find a gym to work out at. So I ended up training with George Kittle randomly. All this is going on and nobody knows because I don't tell anybody about it because our daughter, the boys were 2 pounds. I mean, they were so little. They had, an incredible steep journey ahead of them as far as battling out of the NICU and being healthy and all these things. So overcoming a lot. So when training camp come, I mean, there was probably a handful of people that knew, and that was it. And so on off days, I would actually fly out of Zionsville, and I would pay for a flight to get to Nashville for just a day just to see him and make sure everything was all right. Then I'd come back. And so, it was nuts. I mean, it was insane. And then, I think the one thing I learned after our daughter was, you can't control life. You think you've got a game plan until the curveballs start coming in, then, you got to roll the punches, right? And for whatever reason, those boys were meant to be born in Nashville in that hospital where the greatest people in the world work every single day, and I fully believe that. They're part of our family. They decorated, the nurses out of their own pocket would decorate the boys' rooms in Colts gear. They knew who I was. They knew our story. They knew we were out of town. So, I think that's one thing that you got to accept is we're in this town for a reason. And my wife loved Nashville after that. She would go visit people, and we had a lot of people come down to her. And so I think it just goes to show that you never know what someone's going through. And I didn't want to tell anybody about it because the boys had a long road ahead. And I can say now that they're doing so well. They're on track for their size, and they're happy little guys. And so it's just amazing. 21, lose my daughter. 22, really hard time getting pregnant again. 23, pregnancy, boys born super early, and now 24, pregnant again. And so I think it's, and that's where the community's also been great. Where the Colts heard our story, and Jim brought the boys back on his plane when they didn't have to, and so I'm always indebted to the Colts because they've been there for us every single step of the way.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I have chills listening to that. So I'm not totally in your boat, but I moved to Indianapolis a year ago. You'll like this, KB. You could chime in.
Sure.
So it's we move in on a Sunday. Okay, on a Sunday. And my wife's pregnant, so we're doing everything. I'm moving while she's pregnant. People are looking at me like, "You're the crazy guy, aren't you?" Like, yeah, we're a little bit crazy. And I call KB on a Tuesday, and I'm like, "They're taking my wife in." And so our son was about 5.5 weeks premature, and we were only we were in the NICU for 3 weeks. So when your story was out, I could relate at least a little bit, because we're from the Louisville area. Now we don't know anybody up here, and we're having a baby. I called KB. I go, "Yo, we're having a baby, man." So I'm gonna need a couple days off from work for all of this. But the nurses and doctors. I mean, those people aren't they unbelievable?
I mean, they're just truly sent from heaven, man.
It's unbelievable. What did you learn about yourself?
I mean, I think I think it was at the time, I don't listen to what people say or read or tell about me, but it's the 22 season. This guy, he's not good anymore, and I had a lot of stuff going on in my life, and I didn't play that great that year. And now I've got a little bit more adversity, right? I've got 2 kids. My wife's not here, but Tony really helped me, pour back into the team, and he helped that room become the leaders of that offense again, right? And I think that was a culmination of the perfect things going on in my life where I had these new kids, but it's still a little bit of adversity, but I was becoming the person that I wanted to be again, the player that I wanted to be, the dad that I always wanted to be, the captain, going on to become captain. So it was
fulfilling on one side, and then this other side is I have no idea what's going to happen.
When I look back on it now, and it's there were so many unknowns in the NICU, but we just trusted that every day that they would do better and that the doctors would take care of them. And there was a lot of adversity in the NICU. I mean, it was scary at times. I mean, we would stay there day after day, all day long, right? And it was whatever happens, these guys are going to come home eventually. We just don't know when, right? And then they come home, and you're like, oh, Like, we're in season now. We got 2 kids. No more nurses, no more nothing, right? And it's like, oh, boy.
Wait, you don't come home with us?
Yeah, wait. Like, can we stay a little bit longer? Like, no, man. They're all yours, and then you figure it out. So I think it's being able to roll the changes, too. So
we have kept you way too long. Duke and Ford are waving
Yes.
over here at Dad. Good luck with everything with you and Emma, certainly
Thank you.
here with this pregnancy as well. And you've been a great ambassador for our city, so we're lucky to have you. Good luck this season. Stay healthy, man.
appreciate you guys. Thanks for having me on, man.
Longest
Talk
tenure
to you
Colt,
soon.
Ryan Kelly, live from Westfield.
Thank you to Ryan Kelly.
That's great.
For that, certainly on a variety of levels. With that, I will never forget, really, that interview with Jake and I that Ryan Kelly did a few years ago, and just in general, his overall vulnerability in that moment. And little did we know what was going on in Nashville. And you hear those stories of taking the plane down there and Jim Irsay flying the boys home and everything tragically that him and Emma went through with losing Mary Kate, their daughter. Ryan Kelly has been a great pro. And, while you can debate certainly, future of his tenure here in Indy, sure, that's fine, but there's no denying he's been a great pro on and off the field for the Colts this season. So appreciate him giving us not only his time, but his candor there.
I thought the end there, it was strong, and I think it was powerful because, you have a guy, and we'll get back to Josh Downs here, but you have a guy that, on one side, is kind of fulfilling a life's dream, playing in the NFL and playing well in the NFL. And then on the other side, KB, you have a guy who, his personal life is in just a bad spot, is in a spot that, I can't imagine having 2 kids in the NICU like that and being in Nashville, being 5 hours away and having to fly out on off days. And you know how many off days there truly are when you're in the NFL. So a great story. And then, on the field, not to be callous and bring it back to on the field, this offensive line, protecting Anthony Richardson, opening holes for Jonathan Taylor and Anthony Richardson to run in. A lot's going to be on their plate as well. So that's a great 14 minutes of Ryan Kelly. You miss any of that, check it out. Podcast Center at 1075thefan.com.
Juju Brents, I think that's the hope for us coming up.
It's a fun interview.
After the show tomorrow. So we're kind of getting to a close here with our Colt player interviews from camp, but I've really enjoyed those. You can find all of that on our podcast page. Again, preseason playing time. We should get an answer on that tomorrow. We'll touch on that here coming up in a bit. Shane Steichen might have showed a little bit of his cards yesterday, so we'll hit on that. But you teased it a little bit, Andy. Steven asked this question. We were in the Josh Downs and Nick Cross situation from yesterday. Again, tackle from behind by Nick Cross in a 7-on-7 period. Josh Downs goes down, and he's out for what could be about a month and a half, 4 to 6 weeks. Is the report on the high ankle sprain. Steven goes, if Josh Downs got seriously injured to where he's out for the rest of the season, do you think Nick Cross is still on the team? Whether you want to go there.
It's a great question, though.
With that question, or if you just want to go, should or does this jeopardize Nick Cross competing for a starting job and or his roster spot?
Okay, so my answer is no. Okay, that's my answer. I don't believe
no on the cut or no on the jeopardizing of the starting spot.
I'm gonna go no with both. It was incredibly stupid, and his press conference afterwards did not help things out. But if Nick Cross in remaining practices and in these preseason games and next week the 2 scrimmages with the Arizona Cardinals, don't you believe if Nick Cross plays well, he'll be the starter? Hell, he might be the starter anyway. Now they could always add somebody, but do I think it expedites them adding somebody? By the way, Justin Simmons went out to dinner last night with the Saints brass. I know that's one thing we haven't talked about. That was
they go to Bourbon Street?
Cafe Du Monde for some beignets, probably.
I have no idea.
Might be a good thing if they went to Bourbon Street based off the stories that I've heard.
Well, there are. I know that's right. You've never been to Bourbon Street.
Never been to New Orleans.
Right? I can't believe it.
You got to get out there.
Yeah,
Joe.
dude, I love New Orleans. New Orleans is fun. Again, it's fun for 3-4 days.
I can hear the stories.
Yeah, it's fun for
3 to 4
days.
Maybe 3 to 4 hours from what I hear.
It's fun, man. But anyway, to me, the answer is no. I understand the question. I actually share in the frustration and maybe anger for some. I share in the frustration of the Colts fan, but right now, not having better options at safety leave you to where, yes, you're going to have to at some point rely on Nick Cross in some sort of way. So I might be wrong. You may disagree. I'll say no.
I don't think it was a cuttable offense, but But to me, when I'm evaluating guys that I can trust in my starting lineup, it was a reminder of stupidity is in there.
Well, it's a reminder of what you have, yeah.
That, to me, is hard to overcome. Because when you talk about, let's say he is still playing free safety. Andy, you're the final line of defense. We had this conversation with Rick Venturi yesterday. Your mistakes are largely fatal. Your mistakes are week 18 against the Texans, where that one play can be the difference. So I need guys that don't make me toss and turn for 8 hours a night. And it's a reminder of a little bit of TJ Green in there. And that's scary. I can't deny that. So, again, cuttable, no, I'm not going there. But is it something that I could not ignore in deciding who my starting free safety is going to be? Yes, without question.
I think it gives you pause, too, because if that was in a practice and then you get into game situations against opponents that you don't see on a daily basis and, get that emotion going,
and you
could get yourself in some trouble there.
To be fair to Nick Cross here, I bring up TJ Green. I don't think when Nick Cross has played, we've seen, personal foul penalties galore, and he's hitting guys well out of bounds, or I don't think we've seen that. I think, frankly, TJ Green, we saw a lot of that. But there's been moments where you've had coverage busts, you've had mental breakdowns, you've had just big plays happen because of him. He's been benched, on more than one occasion. So I can't ignore that, and that is why you do see a play like that yesterday. And I'm not even really going at, how he acted after practice, more just the play itself. And I think to myself, man, we can have stupid here on the practice field, and it can be a big deal. Josh Downs is now out for a month and a half because of it. But you could easily have stupid on a Sunday afternoon in the fall, and it could lead to a loss. And in the NFL, especially in today's AFC, especially in today's AFC South, I've said it, and I will continue to say it for the next month before the season gets here. It's so damn competitive. One game can matter. One play can matter. And I can't lose sight of that.
Yeah, and then we saw it last year. I mean, the Colts have to look back to last year. Go to the Ryan Kelly interview. He's talking about it. We're a play away. We're a few minutes away, a minute and a half away from winning the South and being in the playoffs. I think, quickly before we get to a check down here, we'll get some Shane Steichen sound. What did he say about the Josh Downs injury? We'll get to that here in a second. I think it adds... I think there's two things, and the latter here I want to dive into more in the 9 o'clock hour. I think it adds to the frustration around the position and Nick Cross. I mean, you move up to get Nick Cross. He's, a third-rounder. He's been given an opportunity. He's been benched. Then you have this, and I think, this is combined with the last 2 weeks. The story has been about how the safety position outside of Julian Blackmon is simply not good enough. I mean, so this is like the end of that. You finally get to where, all right, preseason games, and right before that, the guy you've been having all this angst about, one of the guys for the last couple weeks, this happened. So I think it's a compiling effect of what has happened here with the safeties and especially Nick Cross. And I think the other thing, and we haven't even brought it up, is I'm not blaming Ballard for this, but I think there's a segment of the fan base, KB, that says, Ballard, you wanted to see these guys play. Here you go. And now look what's happened. I'm not saying that, but I saw a lot of that on Twitter. Like, how much do you still want to see some of these young guys, Ballard? Now you have one of your big-time players who's going to be out for a month and a half.
Someone described the play yesterday by Nick Cross as Hall of Fame dumbass with no remorse.
Was the Hall of Fame dumbass part, was that sounds like a JMV saying. Like, he maybe have said that.
It does sound like a little...
It really does.
Green County
jackassery.
Pretty good,
instead
in
of
my opinion.
A gold jacket, it's a hefty bag or something.
On that front. We will talk a little Pacers. Kind of some
Cross.
news on that front. Scott Agnes going to join us here in a few. We'll get back into Colts camp again. It was a rainy day yesterday, spitting rain all day. How did Anthony Richardson look? What is the preseason playing time outlook for Sunday, 1 o'clock with that kick? We'll share that coming up here in a bit. But before all of that, let's go ahead and check it down.
The Morning Checkdown, brought to you by Butler Bulldogs Basketball. Season tickets are on sale now. Order by August 1st for your shot at the best seats in Hinkle Fieldhouse. Visit butlersports.com/buy tickets.
All right, Colts camp, let's start there. Off today, back at it tomorrow. Shane Steichen met with the media after practice. Obviously, the focus early on in that press conference was about the injury to Josh Downs, the tackle by Nick Cross. We've talked all morning about it. Here's what head coach Shane Steichen had to say.
Yeah, I mean, we got to be smart. I mean, we're competing like crazy, but we got to stay off the ground, and we can't go down. That's bottom line.
That's basically all he said. Now, as for Nick Cross, he did meet with the media yesterday. Bad luck on his part. He was planned to meet, obviously, before this injury went down. Competing, it's football. That's basically what he said.
I mean, we playing football, we competing. So, I mean, Josh, my guy, I love that boy to death. So, I mean, we competing. It's unfortunate, and I got to go see what's up with him when I go inside.
Yeah, and much more on that throughout the show. Do appreciate this from Sean. He goes, really enjoyed the Ryan Kelly interview. Can't imagine going through that.
Me either.
Having to act like you give a you-know-what about your job. So appreciate Ryan Kelly with that. We'll re-rack that here coming up to close things out on this Thursday morning. Colts back to practice 10 a.m. tomorrow. If you haven't been out to Grand Park yet, tomorrow's your final morning practice. And I don't know. I would assume the tickets are already claimed for next week with the Cardinals. I should probably double-check that. But 2 joint practices with the Cardinals next week, Wednesday and Thursday night. And that's it on their 12 practices at Grand Park. Well, Mark, as you cue up the music right behind us, she is the gold medalist from Penn High School, Sarah Hildebrand, being interviewed. Mark, are we on NBC? Or is this USA right now?
This is USA.
She's being interviewed on USA right now.
USA.
The win over the woman from Cuba yesterday in the gold medal match. Sarah Hildebrand, heartbreak in Tokyo, had a big lead in the semifinal match. Unfortunately, that went away. Her emotion was really cool to see yesterday in celebrating that win. She trains with her brother, who was a college wrestler. Penn High School certainly produced some great wrestlers. Sarah Hildebrand, a gold medalist yesterday.
Good for her.
Chloe Digert from Brownsburg gets her second medal here at the Paris Games in the team pursuit. The U.S. pretty dominant in cycling there. So that is a gold medal on that side. On the Olympic front today, certainly all eyes on the men's basketball team. 3 o'clock tip with Serbia. Again, we pointed this out earlier in the show when these two teams met in the group stage. When Nikola Jokic was on the floor, it was played dead even. When he was off the floor, the U.S. outscored him by 26. So I'll be curious to see the Jokic minutes and how that goes today in the semifinal round. And what else? Quincy Hall, unbelievable in the 400-meter, running down the lead yesterday and getting another gold for the U.S. The U.S. has been tremendous in track and field here so far throughout the first few days.
Yeah, the only other thing I had was no medal in beach volleyball for the first time ever from the Americans. So that's Team USA. Again, the men in action coming up 3 o'clock. Really interested in that one. Give me a swoosh, Mark. Let's see. What else do we have quickly? Major League Baseball. Reds losers 6-4 to the Marlins. Cubs 8-2 over the Twins. Cardinals 5-2 over the Rays. Indianapolis Indians winners last night 4-3 there in Nashville. And things are heating up. Brandon Ayuk and potentially the Pittsburgh Steelers. So something to watch over the next 48 hours.
And real quick, Kevin, you mentioned the joint practices. According to the website, it looks like tickets are still available to purchase for the both joint practices.
Well, talking to some of the Colts people last week when we were out there at practice, when they were free, those went like 2 months prior. But I guess the $5 has made it to where they haven't went as quick.
Again, those proceeds going to the YMCA Flag Football of Indianapolis. 6 o'clock start time on that. Jonathan Gannon, head coach of the Cardinals, already come out and said that Kyler Murray will not play in the preseason. So if you want to see Kyler and potentially you want to see Marvin Harrison Jr., Wednesday and Thursday at Grand Park. One more note on the Olympic front I thought was pretty cool yesterday. I know Cole Hawker made the rounds in Paris from a media standpoint. Rai Benjamin, I hope I'm saying that name right. I think he's a hurdler.
Mm-hmm.
He qualified for the final, and Lewis Johnson interviewed him afterwards. I think you see this pretty commonly in the track and field.
Yeah, I saw the race.
And all of a sudden, Lewis asked him the first question, and Rai sounded like Christy Sides and Tom Allen had a baby together.
He totally did. He had no voice.
I'm like, oh, man, I feel bad for him. But he could muster up, sorry, I lost my voice cheering for Cole yesterday.
Yeah, it was awesome.
I'm like, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm like, here he is, getting ready for his Olympic moment, and he can't help himself go absolutely nuts cheering for Cole Hawker yesterday and that. So I thought that was pretty fun.
I was startled by his voice when he first spoke.
Shocked. I think Lewis
was like,
Johnson
oh my God.
was, taken aback by it.
He got that. He mustered up to be able to say like a couple sentences. So
about 2:30 Eastern, by the way. I think that's the approximate time for Noah Lyles in that 200 meter, which should be very, very competitive. Lyles did not win his semifinal, which he didn't win his semifinal in the 100 meter, but the uber confident, and I think he would accept the word cocky, Noah Lyles. has made it clear that he will have the lead come the turn of the 200-meter as he tries to go for the double.
All right, let's take a break. Coming up on the other end, a preview, Serbia, Team USA. The Serbians just being sleepy. Are they playing possum with us? Scott Agnes, Fieldhouse Files. We'll talk with him next year. It's a Thursday, 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
It's the Wake Up Call with KB and Andy on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
We're back at Grand Park tomorrow. It'll be day 10 of 12, just an hour-long practice, 10 a.m. to 11 a.m., so we'll be up in Westfield for that. Actually, our final show from training camp at Grand Park. And before you know it, I did see a few members of the Pacers staff out at practice yesterday. It will be time to shift gears, certainly for the Fever, coming up, a week from tomorrow. They get started back up. And since the quiet time for the NBA, so we won't keep Scott Agnes too long. We appreciate the time here on this Thursday morning. Scott, did I see we're already got a couple preseason dates to trickle out for the Pacers?
Yeah. Other teams have announced their schedule, so that has let us know two of probably 4 dates that we'll see for this Pacer team come October.
Yeah, I think you had, October 8th maybe and like the 17th, something like that for the preseason dates.
That sounds right.
Correct me if I'm wrong, preseason for the Colts, we'll get them local on Fox 59 on Sunday, local on Fox 59 next Saturday night against the Cardinals. Then they'll play actually 2 weeks from tonight's their final preseason game, ironically enough, and that's the Amazon game down in Cincinnati. Preseason for the NBA and the Pacers, though, I feel like I've never watched a Pacers preseason game on TV. Am I wrong on that?
Yeah, you probably are, because usually what happens is Bally Sports Indiana broadcasts the 2 home games.
Okay, so they do the home but not the road. Is that what I'm thinking of?
Typically, yeah.
Okay.
So the first 2 games would be not available, and then they come home for the final 2. It's a pattern they've done for now probably 4 straight years. And those 2 home games are typically what is available to fans who have your standard package. Now, if you have like DirecTV or League Pass, sometimes those first 2 games you can get in, but I never tell fans to plan on them. But that's one big thing when people are talking about all this TV stuff, even in the WNBA. I was like, hey, look, NBA hadn't even solved completely what they need to do. There's no reason every NBA game, preseason or not, should not be available to anyone who wants to watch it.
Amen.
I'm with you.
Amen.
Yeah, listen.
And that's not even a Bally rant.
Let the church say amen. I'm good with that. Look at Scott Agnes waking up this morning and giving us an amen at 8:38. I appreciate that. Scott Agnes with us, Fieldhouse Files, Payless Liquors Hotline. I want to get to Team USA. Supposedly, the Serbians are playing possum with the rest of the world, so I want to dive into that here in just a second. But, we have seen, and I know even last week, you basically told us this is what you thought it would look like for Tyrese Halliburton playing, mop-up minutes the other night. Andrew Nembhard and company, I didn't think he didn't have a great Olympics, really just the one game in Canada. They put a lot of resources, as you know, Scott, into these Olympics, and Canada goes home early with no medals. So what do you think of Halliburton and Team USA, and what did you make of the Olympic experience there with Andrew Nembhard and Team Canada?
Yeah, I think first for USA, they just keep handling their business. The lineups have shuffled a little bit. They've changed things up, but all along, once they settle into games and get to that second half, by then they're usually up 20-25 and able to cruise the rest of the way. Now, they have another game coming up here today, so that will be the one for us to watch, obviously, and looking forward to that one. But again, the USA should not have any problems. If they handle their business, they have the talent and on the coaching staff and on this court that they should come away with their 5th gold medal. And then for Canada, yeah, you're exactly right, Andy. That's a big disappointment for Canada. They had a ton of talent on this roster. I think 11 of the players with NBA experience that are currently in the league, maybe. And so for them to not even get to the medal round and then to come up short the other night. And I think the big talking point with them has to start around Jamal Murray, guy who's won an NBA title, could be a leader of the team. And something was just off there. And he was just an average playing. And in terms of Nembhard specifically, I would agree. He was fine. But maybe it was the whole team. Something was off on that roster. But when Nembhard came in, it looked like he knew his role and he just did that and stuck to that.
Yeah, really, Nembhard only had one game of note offensively in the 4. But I would say Canada will exit the Olympics. Probably it's the most disappointing team, unless I guess the U.S. gets upset today or something along that end. Scott Agnes from Fieldhouse Files with us here on the Payless Liquors Hotline. Scott, is it fair to say at this point, given the amount of money the Pacers have spent, internally this offseason, is it fair to say T.J. McConnell won't get a contract extension?
Not necessarily, because all of that would be future money. But anything additional now, you're probably looking into the luxury tax for future seasons. And so that
or a Miles Turner departure as well.
100%. Yep. All those things are something you have to be considering right now. Yeah, no doubt. That's probably the bigger thing at hand, because with TJ, you could make a dollar figure work, and you could, I don't know, you'll be able to figure that one out if need be. It's the Miles one is the main one here, because look, he's got to see what these fellow bigs are getting, 25, 30 million. I mean, Isaiah Hartenstein in particular, what he just was able to get in the off season. And if I'm Miles, I'm sitting back and, hey, I want one more opportunity to get that. And simply it really won't be there unless the Pacers are really able or wanting to go into the luxury tax. And so that's what things become. That's a good problem to have, because it means you have good players. You've probably had some success, and now you got to really play the business of basketball game here. But Miles is one that potentially could get squeezed out just from a contract standpoint.
Scott Agnes with us, Fieldhouse Files. Scott, I wanted to ask as a follow-up to that, obviously Turner has been he's been a lightning bolt around here, has he not, for a couple years, to say the least. And I really think since Carlisle and company have taken over, his game has kind of went, at least offensively, to the next level. If I gave you, and let's just imagine this, Turner and McConnell and Obi Toppin and Andrew Nembhard all kind of hit the market at the same time, where in your mind does Turner rank on list of importance? How vital is he to the team in getting something done? Or is he a guy that you say might be like a cap casualty? He walks away. What's the effect on the team if that were to happen?
Yeah, what you're really hoping is to see something out of Isaiah Jackson this upcoming season. Is they really haven't had that replacement shine like they had wanted to, right? Like, you drafted Isaiah Jackson almost 4 years ago. Jalen Smith, you thought had popped, but then come playoff time, he's not even in the rotation. You had plenty of centers before that, if we want to even get into that, with Goga Bitadze, with Daniel Tice, and obviously with Domantas Sabonis. But Miles has been there all along. I think he's been most consistent now because of Tyrese Halliburton, who's really set the tone offensively and gotten him involved. It's the best point guard, really the only point guard that Miles has ever played with. So the combination of being the lone center out there and having an elite point guard, I think, has really helped untap what Miles is able to do offensively. We've known and have seen what he's been able to do defensively. And to your earlier question, I think among those players, the player that jumps out to me is a guy who just got an extension, is Andrew Nembhard.
Right.
Because he's very young. He can play both sides of the ball. And he's the guy among that group that you can't afford to lose, in my mind.
Again, Scott Agnes can find his work, Fieldhouse Files. We are about to restart things at the Indiana Fever here coming up. Week from Friday, they will play the Mercury. Ironically, the Mercury have, I think, 3 players still playing over the Olympics for Team USA. Christy Wallace really barely playing for Team Australia. That's who the U.S. women will play here coming up in the semifinal round tomorrow. Scott, did I see a State Fair appearance for Caitlin Clark and a few Fever players earlier this week?
You did, yeah. They unveiled a new basketball court that will be out at the fairgrounds permanently, and so it was clearly a big enough deal that the governor was there, and their 3 All-Stars were out there, plus Erica Wheeler, to help unveil it a little bit. So that's among the many things, KB, that they've done over the last couple of weeks. Yesterday they did some team building with zip lining and those kind of things. They've done games internally on their court, from a home run derby, which I gotta love Caitlin's competitiveness, because in the middle of her interview she explains the home run derby and then goes, "Oh yeah, by the way, I won, of course." Anyways,
she was raking. She was raking. I mean, I saw the highlights of it. She was hitting balls that would have gone outside of Bankers Life Fieldhouse or Gamebridge.
Yeah, you're exactly right. From the video they showed, she was hitting from one baseline that crushed it to the other baseline and ran into the mats. It would have went on to Delaware Street if there was no brick walls right there. No exaggeration. She crushed it. So they've been doing that. Some communication drills, mostly stuff like horse and things like that you can break up the monotonous of a WNBA schedule. And then more to that, I think Caitlin's gotten rest. She's gotten pool time. She's tried to hit the golf course some. Same with Christy Side. So it's been a nice little break and balance right now between, several hours in the morning of on-court time and in the weight room with your teammates, and then do whatever the heck you want in the afternoon. And I think they've really been able to maximize this. And, again, they should be the team that really comes out of this strong because, as you alluded to, Wallace is the only player unavailable, and she's kind of fallen out of the rotation over the last couple of weeks of games. And so this team is poised to really take off, I think, with a lighter schedule and the easiest schedule going home.
14 games left. They're 8 days away. They begin with Phoenix at home on Friday, August 16th. We need to remember, before they went on this break, they had that terrible 8-point loss at Dallas, and you kind of answered it there. And I guess I'll besides the break, I'll ask you why. Why do you think they'll have things ready to go next Friday? Why do you think that's the case? 14 games left, Scott.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, with Andy, first of all, will be the schedule is a lot more fair, just in terms of both opponents and in terms of frequency of games. We all go back to that start of the season, which was just unruly, but they got through it. Second thing is just now they're able to have this second training camp, and you're seeing the team bond and get closer, and I think that chemistry will absolutely translate come game time. And then more to that, they know the end is in sight. They know every game matters here down the stretch, and the top 8 teams will make the playoffs. That has been the goal all along, and there's no reason this team should not do that this year.
He is the pride of North Central. You can find his work at Fieldhouse Files. He is Scott Agnes. Scott, thank you, sir.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys.
Scott Agnes right there. Late September, pencil that in for Pacer Media Day. Early October, those preseason games start. It's crazy to think they will be here in a hurry. And for a guy like Halliburton, and Nemhard even.
Get some rest, fellas.
It's just kind of a month and a half off until you ramp it up here and get ready for another season.
All right, so the team is doing, we got to take a break, but the team is doing, the Fever are doing, team building exercises. What are the great what's the Mount Rushmore of team building exercises? Is it the trust fall where you have to catch a person? Is it you have to carry an egg on a spoon and do a relay race, the water balloon toss back and forth? Which one is
I say you go drink on one of those pedal bars.
Oh, that's what I'm talking about. That's what we need to do around here at the Fan.
By the way,
I'm
convinced we've got Netherlands and Spain women's water polo right now on in the studio. I'm convinced every woman in the pool would thoroughly kick my ass.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. I mean, there is no doubt about it.
This
is not the only sport either.
No,
It's not the only one.
That is very fair.
You need the guy that rescues the caps at the bottom of the pool. He'd need to rescue you.
Bob.
Yeah, Bob the cap guy.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
Jeez. Wow.
Yeah. I can't imagine treading water like they do. So,
No.
But again, I can't do anything that's happening right now in the Olympics. Quick break. We'll come back, wrap up hour number 2. More Josh Downs conversation coming up next.
It's the Wake Up Call with KB and Andy on 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
How much will the Colts starters play on Sunday? We'll play a little Shane Steichen audio coming up. Might have shown his hand a little bit yesterday. We'll do that here. More on the Josh Downs injury. 3 o'clock today, Andy, USA and Serbia, semifinals of men's basketball from the Olympics. Again, I'm pretty sure, well, I know they have not had a minute in the fourth quarter yet where the game's been in single digits. I don't think they've even had a minute in the second half. Maybe there's been a minute or two in the third quarter. Today, do we get an ounce of game pressure on Team USA?
I'm going to say yes, we do. I guess I'm buying into the Serbians, kind of playing possum against us and the rest of the world. Am I buying into that? I mean, that is the narrative. And again, it can't be a trap game if you know it's a trap game, right? I mean, if everyone talks about it being a trap game, you can't say, well, we fell into a trap. You can't do that. I think the Americans will be ready, and I think, we talk about guys like Anthony Davis. Joel Embiid has taken some heat, not only from the fans over there in Paris, but the fans back here in the States. And so it's time for Embiid, who offensively has been much better the last few games for sure. So it's up to Anthony Davis and Joel Embiid to make sure the Joker doesn't go wild today. Don't you agree? I still think we win, but if you told me there was like a second to where there were a few minutes where we wondered, I don't think that would be too surprising today.
Yeah, when these teams met to start the Olympics, it was a very competitive first quarter, really into the second. That was when Kevin Durant went full takeover mode.
Mm-hmm.
If there's probably two stats you could point to that makes you think we could see some game pressure today. When Jokic played in that first game, the game was played evenly. Plus minus was 0. When he was off the floor for 10 minutes, the U.S. outscored Serbia by 26.
That's an unbelievable stat. I mean, he's got to play 40 minutes in the game then.
The other stat to note, the U.S. shot 56% from 3 in that first game. Serbia just 24. So, if those numbers obviously become much closer, you could see that. But again, U.S.-Serbia, 3 o'clock today. France and Germany, 11 a.m., the other semifinal.
Yeah, there's no doubt that, kind of all the talk and all the leading up, all the different strategy comes down to these two games. We'll see what happens later on today. Like KB mentioned, what did Shane Steichen say about his starters playing in the preseason? We'll let you hear that conversation and more conversation on Josh Downs as well. Hour number 3 around the corner. Appreciate you hanging out with us. Wake Up Call 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
It's the Wake Up Call with KB and Andy on 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
All right, 9 o'clock hour here on what looks to be a pretty nice temperature here on this Thursday morning. It was scorching hot to start the week, and yesterday we were fighting spitting rain. Laptop has made it through the rain from yesterday.
I was worried a little bit about you. My iPad's so old that at this point, if it broke, it'd make me actually get off my fat butt and go get a new one, which is exactly what I need to do.
Maybe some water might have revived it yesterday.
Maybe you would do fine. Did you notice yesterday, about 3 minutes after practice ended, the sun came out?
Oh, my gosh, it was glorious.
It was the most, Mark, you'd have loved it. It was like literally practice ended, and we had sat out there for 4 hours, boo-hoo, doing a sports radio show. And the second practice ended, I swear, the clouds disappeared, and it was the most bright and sunny and beautiful day that we've had around here in quite a while.
And you looked and you said, where the hell was this all day?
Where was this? Oh, the entire time. So good for them. By the way, yesterday, if kids weren't, if you were out of school still, you didn't go back to like today, and you got to go out to Colts camp, a lot of guys signed autographs, and there weren't a lot of kids there. You probably got Anthony Richardson and everybody else.
Boy, I was talking to, I forget his name. He drove down from Fort Wayne with his kids. They were rattling off the autographs. It was like Nelson, Buckner, Richardson, Kenny
everybody.
Moore. I was like, damn, that's a real good haul here.
It's a good football to have, huh?
And, kudos to the Colts for doing that on a daily basis, and certainly on a rainy day, rewarding the fans that were out there. Shane Steichen, in terms of preseason playing time, I would say the back and forth yesterday was quite interesting. You're going to hear the audio clip in just a second. I decided to follow up with Shane Steichen, and him saying the words possibly yes was like me getting Rosie to apologize to her brother for stealing something from him.
Steichen even smiled at you when he said possibly yes. He gave you a smile.
I hope the tone comes across in this audio clip, because I literally was having a root canal in him trying to say those two words. We'll play the clip right here. This is Shane Steichen yesterday about preseason playing time ahead of Sunday.
I'm going to go finalize that tomorrow. I have a good idea of what I'm going to do. I'll let you guys know Friday for sure. I just want to get with the staff tomorrow because I haven't told the players yet, so I want to tell them first.
Do you think they'll play some?
Possibly, yes.
I don't know if it comes across, but he did give. I can be there. Go watch the video. It's all over the internet. He did flash you a smile like, yes, they're basically going to play, but no, I'm not going to tell you until maybe on Friday.
Possibly, yes. And then like a quick head turn to like the other side of
to talk more about Josh Downs being
media
injured.
content. Hey, I gave him a reprieve. I know. Does he want to answer about Nick Cross the whole interview here? So
do you hate Nick Cross?
Possibly, yes.
Possibly, yes.
So we'll see if Shane confirms that coming up tomorrow after practice. Andy, last year in the opener, 3 series for the offense that ended up being 29 plays. That's a good amount of plays per series there, and that includes Michael Pittman Jr. That includes Ryan Kelly. For what it's worth, Ryan Kelly I think gave the answer of like, yeah, it's probably a necessary evil. You play some in the preseason. I don't think he wants to play a ton. Quentin Nelson played 29 snaps. Now the defense was out there for 2 series, 2 very quick series. But again, think of Franklin, think of Stewart. I mean, those guys played in the preseason opener. So offense 3 series, defense 2. Yes, no, you good with that?
Well, let me.
I guess give your opinion and then maybe give what you think Steichen will do.
Okay, yeah, I think you know what's funny. What's wrapped up in this entire conversation, and we haven't even mentioned it too much this morning. I'll just throw it out there. Are we now more scared because of what has happened to Josh Downs?
No, I don't think you can play like that.
Well, but I think some people are. I think you see what happened to Josh Downs, and you get a little bit scared. To me, and that was, by the way, was not football. That was stupidity, what happened to Josh Downs yesterday. To me, yes, they should play. And to me, if you told me the starting defense was 2 series and Anthony Richardson and company were also 2 series, I would be fine with that. If you say, well, AR needs a little bit more, we're going to go a 3rd series with that offense, I'm also okay with that. But I think they should play. I think they need to play, but they don't need to play too much. It's tough to legislate this in the NFL, but I would go if you get 2 series from the defense, 2 series from the offense. I don't think that's problematic at all. And then, just for fans watching the game, reminder, guys like A.D. Mitchell and Alec Pierce, especially Mitchell, you would imagine he's getting run with the second unit, right? So I don't know if you'll see him with Anthony Richardson. I sure as hell know you will see him when Joe Flacco comes in. Plus, I wouldn't mind seeing Flacco for a couple series as well. So 2 or 3 series, I'm good with it. It's what I want to see. I hope they do it. And I think ultimately, in the end, you will see starters coming up on Sunday.
Yeah, and I think, again, it's an important message. It's kind of funny. How about Andy Reid saying Patrick Mahomes will play around a quarter coming up this weekend? It's so funny how teams differ on this. I mean, Bryce Young's not going to play. What? Bryce Young?
Bryce Young had a
is not
terrible
going to play
season.
in the preseason?
Right.
But Patrick Mahomes is? It's just fascinating how teams handle it. On the Colts front, I kind of view it in this light. I get that they're bringing back the same coordinators and play callers. So, that thought of, hey, you need to get used to game moments in the new system, that is kind of out the window. Now, I think you are kind of in the new offense. I think with Richardson, it is. I mean, if you go out to Grand Park, you're going to see some creativity from a run game standpoint that obviously Gardner Minshew was not in there. Just get used to it right now. Red zone, short yardage, 4th and 1 plays are not going to be Gardner Minshew to Tyler Goodson this year. Let me reassure you of that. So I would like to see the starting offense out there for a couple of series, especially under the assumption they won't play a week from Saturday. So there's 3 preseason games.
Agreed.
If you're already not playing them in one of them, which, again, the joint practices next Wednesday and Thursday, in many teams' eyes, those kind of supplant the preseason game. I'd like to see the starters out there. And I think it's important to see the defense out there. Some might disagree with that. It's year 3 at Gus Bradley. You're bringing back, all 11 starters, et cetera, et cetera. But with the Ebicom thing playing out, and obviously what you have at free safety right now, and the issues there, I mean, you were 28th in points allowed each of the last 2 seasons. And, I said this to Rick Ventura yesterday. If you want to play the PR spin from the Colts, you could go to 2 years ago and say, all right, 28th in points per game allowed, but how many times did Matt Ryan and the offense turn the ball over? Or, put us in bad positions? All right, fine. That excuse doesn't apply to last year. So I think it's an important message to send to both units. Be out there for a little bit. Nothing earth-shattering, but I would like to see that come up on Sunday. And I actually think, I don't have like a strong conviction, but I do think Shane Steichen will play his starters.
I don't know why he wouldn't. I see it as
ask that to Dave Canales in Carolina with Bryce Young. I mean, it's just weird. I mean, some teams are just odd with this.
Yeah, but I guess where I come down on this, and listen, there could be an injury, and we could look back next week and say, Andy, you wanted them to play 2-3 series. What does that matter? I just feel like at some point Anthony Richardson has to actually play football. like it just can't
17
always
17 games since his rookie year.
It can't always
or since
be
his high school. I should say.
And I know you say, well, it's a couple possessions, and he may throw the ball 6 times, whatever it may be. I understand it, but at some point, Anthony Richardson has to have reps against somebody that's not Gus Bradley's defense.
I mean, even
he
if
just has to.
Even if he's just handing the ball off, he needs to get those reps and get used to like game day action and everything.
Yeah, doesn't everyone, I mean, I think everyone basically feels like that. The question I would have, if let's say Anthony Richardson gets 2 possessions, and that can be flexible. If you go a quick 3 and out, or it's the first, it's the first or second down and 6, and Anthony throws a pick, and it's like, okay, so we didn't get many reps there. Let's throw him back in for another series. What do you think the over/under is on Richardson planned runs? Where would be a good line? 1.5?
Yeah.
To me, that's the question. Isn't does AR play? It's how much of the playbook do you use when AR is in there?
Great
does that make sense?
By the way, by Anthony Richardson yesterday near the end of practice on the wet fields up at Grand Park. Yeah, I don't need to see design run. I know he can run it.
I was like, design runs better be 0 in the preseason. Design should be 0.
See.
Yeah.
We'll see.
I think Luke brings up a good point. Does Steichen call Sean Payton and ask, how long or if he'll play his starters? I do think coaches call each other and discuss that. Last year, Buffalo did not play their starters against the Colts in week 1. But I think Buffalo coming off of, now this would have been 2 years ago, a little different than the Colts under a first-year head coach and, one of the rather more embarrassing seasons they've had in franchise history, really, in 2022. Hell, listen to Ryan Kelly discuss it. And if you missed that, we'll re-rack that here coming up here in about a half hour. So, I think you ask out of curiosity, but I don't think that needs to be the end-all, be-all for your decision-making.
And think about this as well. I mentioned this with Latu, or I mentioned this with A.D. Mitchell, I guess, but Latu fits this mold. Even if it's not the first teamers, there are guys that will play in the second and probably third quarters that I have a great deal of interest in. I mean, Latu is one of them. A.D. Mitchell, Alec Pierce. I mean, what if A.D. Mitchell goes out there and he predominantly plays with Joe Flacco, and Flacco finds him down the field a couple times, or he draws, as Coach Venturi said yesterday, he draws a deep pass interference or two. I hate to denounce Alec Pierce saying this, but I think Alec will be in there first. There's still the excitement besides the starters of Latu, of A.D. Mitchell, of, look at the safeties. The safeties, we're going to continually watch the guys that get in there backup-wise. They go make plays. Maybe they get more reps in, the final preseason game, in practice next week against the Arizona Cardinals. Dallas Flowers, is very much kind of that fourth, cornerback, third cornerback, I guess you could say, on the outside, working his way back. The new kickoff rule. We haven't seen the Colts do anything. Are they creative on the kickoff rule? I mean, we're probably going to have how many kickoffs in the game? 7, 8, 9, 10, depending on how much scoring is done. So, it's the first time that we get data, and the data, it doesn't have to always be, the starters, the 11 on offense and the 11 on defense. I'm a firm believer that I'm almost as interested in second quarter and maybe early third quarter as I am how some of the guys look in the first quarter.
Man, that's a nerdy preseason thing to say.
Boy, you like that? Hey, listen, I'm all in. Oh, come on. Every Colts fan's going to be locked in on this preseason game. Well, Bo Nix is going to play. That's kind of interesting, is it not?
If Richardson's playing, whatever, let's say
first quarter,
2 series, Mitchell should be in there for one of them and Pierce should be in there for the other. I mean,
okay, I'm fine with that.
That's how I would operate.
But I mean, Mitchell, you would imagine, would play further on, right? Well, I would love to see him with Joe Flacco.
Right. Well, why not Pierce too? I mean, if that's a true competition, and then same thing at safety, from a Cross and a Thomas standpoint. Again, the news item of yesterday was Josh Downs suffering a high ankle sprain. The reports out there from Ian Rappaport from NFL Network, going to be out 4 to 6 weeks. Ian said, while high ankle sprains can be tricky, the hope is the recovery time is on the shorter end. It apparently looked bad, which I would agree with, but the diagnosis wasn't worst case. So if we map out that calendar, 4 weeks would be the Wednesday before the Texans game, which is the season opener on September 8th. 5 weeks would be the Wednesday before the Packers game, week 2. 6 weeks would be the Wednesday before the Steelers game. So if he hits the 4 weeks, he would have 3 practices, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, to be ready for week 1. I think anytime we discuss ankle sprains, particularly for shifty, quick guys like Josh Downs, you talk about how much practice do you need and how much does this thing linger. But that's a little bit of the calendar look at it. And as we've said all along, it's a front-loaded schedule. And just in general, and I would say this about any wideout, although Josh Downs is probably the one that's most frequently targeted from Anthony Richardson, it's just a bummer that, for the next 2 to 3 weeks, he gets no reps with Anthony Richardson.
Yeah, I'm frustrated. We talked about this obviously the first 2 hours, KB. You go back on the podcast and listen even more to that. Yesterday was one of those days. It was just really frustrating. It's an injury that did not need to happen. And Nick Cross afterwards was, we're playing football, we're competing, and I'm sorry, you're not playing football when it's 7-on-7. I'm sorry. I mean, you mentioned it. I thought it was actually a good point. Back in the mini camp in, what was that, June or July? I can't even remember now. Was it June or July?
May. I think it was May. May.
Oh, my God. Was it all the way back in May that, there was, you see Michael Pittman collide with, who was it, Julian Blackmon?
Jalen Jones.
Jalen Jones. And that is a mistake. And yesterday was not a mistake. And Nick Cross has to be better. And I know
it was a stupid mistake.
It was a stupid mistake. And I know he's fighting his ass off. I get it. He's trying to, concrete himself on the team to be a starter and everything else. But Josh Downs is more important than Nick Cross is. Sorry. And Josh Downs, I think what's frustrating is I think Downs still could, but was really going to have a good year. And I worry about him not being back in the first week or two and then being compromised in the Green Bay and Houston game. I worry about this being a nagging injury. We had him on a couple weeks ago, KB, and he talked about how he had the knee injury last year, so much of last year. And so maybe we didn't even see the best of Downs last year, and I think we were really hoping to see the best of him this year. What do they do? Shane Steichen was asked that. Different guys can play in the slot. Here's what he had to say yesterday.
Josh is a hell of a football player, but those guys are interchangeable. I mean, you can put Pitt inside there. It just depends, right, what kind of route combination we're doing. You can put anybody you want there in that slot position.
I mean, I think that's a good job of Steichen, trying not to overreact too much,
yeah, I think
but I don't think it's the case.
I think it's a little bit of a discredit to Josh Downs.
I would agree.
Shane isn't trying to go there, but in my opinion, it's notable because at tight end, you don't have the lovey that Rosie Bowen would like to go to bed with.
The lovey.
You don't have that. The stuffed animal.
Is that? That's obviously a stuffed animal,
yeah,
right?
You don't have that. Jack Doyle. Boom, 3rd and 5. That's who you go to here. Boom. For the quarterbacks, Josh Downs is that for Anthony Richardson. So I think that is why this is such a bummer. And again, the schedule. I mean, you could make the case. The toughest back-to-back stretch all season is week 1 and week 2. You could easily make the case. And
yes, you could.
Especially with Green Bay having an extra 2 days to prepare for you and coming off their game in Brazil. And the fact that Houston, I don't think Houston is going to be in the we're overlooking Indy mode. I mean, it's the first game of the season. I just don't think teams kind of fall into that.
I mean, everything all season, off season, KB, has been about how this is a rivalry. I don't think Houston's going to walk in and not be pumped up.
You're so amped up for that. And I'll echo what I've said all morning long. It was a completely avoidable tackle by Nick Cross. It was a 7-on-7. The ball had already been completed, as Andy pointed out earlier. When Jalen Jones and Michael Pittman Jr. collided back in May, this was a 50-50 ball up in the air. It could be yours. It could be mine. That stuff happens. It's impossible to be somewhat competitive and avoid that. This was an out pattern in a 7-on-7. The ball had already been completed. This was not Nick Cross trying to dive in and make a great interception or a great pass deflection and potentially break up the ball. And it's not like Downs is in front of him to where he could punch it out. Sometimes you do see that.
Right.
Some of the DBs try to rip at it. Downs had his back turned to him. I mean, he was already running towards the sidelines, and there's no congestion. There was no, hey, sorry, guys were in my way, and I couldn't avoid them, and I tripped and fell, and, friendly fire. This was none of that. So I think that is why I use the word stupid, and I don't use it lightly. I think that's exactly a fair way to describe it. And Shane Steichen does not undress dudes on the practice field very often. And I thought Shane Steichen's reaction right after it happened told you everything you needed to know about what he said or what his feelings were on the tackle from behind by Nick Cross.
Yeah, and I listen, it's the last time I'll say this today. I was also irked by the lack of, I guess, reading the room, accountability. I'm trying to think of the phrase with Nick Cross afterwards. Again, when you say, well, it's football, we're all competing out there. 7-on-7, that's not football. I don't know what to tell you. It's not the preseason game on Sunday. It's not the regular season opener against the Houston Texans. It's none of those things. It's not football. It's two-hand touch. I mean, that's what it is. It's 7-on-7. I mean, quite literally, there are no trenches on 7-on-7, right? I mean, there's no defensive line. There's no offensive line. It's quite literally not football. I think that bothered me. I've seen a lot on Twitter. I thought Cross did not help himself yesterday with his press conference after. I think people wanted him to bend the knee. Maybe too much, but he wasn't good yesterday.
No, and I would agree with that. I also can separate that and be like, okay, let's just evaluate Cross for the player that we've seen so far now into his third season. And we got the question earlier from Steven, okay, how or should this impact Nick Cross's standing on the football team and Nick Cross competing for the free safety job? In no way, shape, or form do I feel like this should lead to Nick Cross being cut.
Right.
Let me make that very clear. But if I am the coaching staff and I'm making a decision on who should start next to Julian Blackman, factoring stupidity is on the prerequisites for evaluating that job, and this was stupid. It was an element of stupid. And I don't think I've watched Nick Cross in 2 years be, uber penalty-centric or late hit galore, TJ Green, like none of that.
He hasn't been Jamal Adams or somebody like that.
There are reasons why this staff has not trusted him for a starting job, and I thought in a different way. Yesterday was another moment of that.
Oh,
frankly.
I think fans view it that way.
I think this would impact or should impact Gus Bradley's thinking in what he ultimately decides next to Julian Blackmon. I guess we should note this. Nick Cross, basically, every day he continues to be the starter. Now, Rodney Thomas II, I would say here this week, has started to kind of creep into a few more starting reps. After that play took place, it looked like to me Thomas started to take more starting reps.
Agreed.
The rest of practice.
Yeah, I agree with you.
I think it's fair to say it was kind of trending a little bit in that way, but still, I think it's just something to note. And we'll obviously take a look at it tomorrow. Again, Cross has still been the guy initially at that free safety spot. And then when Thomas comes out there, that allows for Julian Blackmon, to bump down to or stay at that strong safety spot. And Thomas, I think, is much more of a natural back end of the guy. He's not, necessarily a strong safety. So that'll be something to keep an eye on when we are out there tomorrow, 10 a.m. to 11, the final morning practice at Grand Park.
Let me give you this one as well. We haven't heard. Ed Dodds, the assistant general manager for the Colts, met with the media yesterday. Now, did he meet with the media yesterday because of his health scare? Or was he always planned to meet with the media yesterday?
No, he was always.
Okay, he was always planned to meet with the media yesterday. He was asked directly
about
a
blood clot issue for those.
I mean, it was scary.
Unfamiliar with
he
that.
He has to have the rib removed, like your boy said. That's what Sam Hartman had.
Yeah,
if I'm not mistaken.
He mentioned that it was the same thing as Sam Hartman. So it sounds like he's on the, definitely on the mend, but frightening to hear.
Mark, you'll like this. I didn't cut this part, but Dodds was like, I don't drink. Diet Cokes or Cokes, and I don't eat fast food, and I still had this health issue. And I'm thinking, well, I do all those things. Well, that's the first thing I think of. Well, I do all those things. Uh-oh.
He did add he likes Copenhagen and bourbon.
I don't like Copenhagen, but bourbon-wise, I think everyone knows what I think. CircleCityWhiskeyCo.com.
Let's have a triple cheeseburger before I'm talking to you, Dodds.
Here's Dodds on the safety position.
I think we got to get to the games and just see because we're just trying to find the best combination to get all the best people out there at the same time. Julian's obviously made plays. Nick's done some good things. Rodney has, and so has Ronnie. And it's just figuring out, what, and not just the best combination of two guys, but which guy free, which guy strong, because there's just different things stressed out of either one of those positions. And some guys have done both, some haven't. So we'll see. We just got to keep watching them.
Yeah, so we'll see. I mean, the game. I kind of agree with him at some point. You got to see the games.
I wanted to spin the conversation yesterday a little bit of like, all right, let's stop talking about Justin Simmons and free agent signing.
Well,
I made it clear that I think they should pursue someone. And again, I don't even say you have to hit the home run with Simmons. Just a single double for a little bit more competition.
Right.
But if they go in-house, what is the best combination? And, he mentioned strong safety is a lot of responsibility in the Gus Bradley defense. Now, having said that, free safety is where fatal can occur. And I'll continue to reiterate that. Strong safety, fatal doesn't necessarily occur 5 yards from the line of scrimmage. You still have other guys that can help you out in that area. So if that's my thought process, I might be of the thought of move Blackmon back there. And a guy like Ronnie Harrison Jr., for example, has played linebacker and strong safety in this league. Would he be better suited for that? Again, they've flirted with that a little bit here in camp, but I wouldn't say too much.
Okay, so I am probably of the belief that might be the way I go. Is give Ronnie a chance at strong and give Blackmon a chance at free.
Not what we've seen here in the last couple of days.
I know. Thomas has got more run. That just might be the way I go. Before we get to a morning check down, can I give I want you guys' thoughts. What if Brandon Ayuk goes to the Pittsburgh Steelers? I'm just like, what are your NFL thoughts on that? If that ends up happening this weekend. And there's some smoke that might end up happening. I mean, it makes the Steelers much better unless they give up a litany of players. I can't believe they do that, right? It'd probably be just picks.
No division in football is competitive 1-4 as the AFC North. None. there's no division of football that comes close to having the competitiveness of those 4 teams. And Pittsburgh is probably the team you'd put 4th right now.
Boy, I just disrespect Deshaun Watson's game so much in Cleveland.
With Nick Chubb playing one game last year, and Cleveland won games with 5 different quarterbacks.
I know.
They still made the playoffs.
I know, but now they don't have. Now they have to play Deshaun Watson.
Well, I guess
right? You remember the Colts game, KB?
Sure, but yet they still have so much talent. I mean, Garrett single-handedly won that game. So I just think it creates again an even deeper division and. I think people forget about Pittsburgh. I think people easily just, they're not potent enough. They're not this, they're not that. And then every year they're like, wait, they've won 9 or 10 games.
They won 9 or 10 games. They're in the playoffs again.
I do think that wide receiver group needs a bit of a boost because they lost Deontay Johnson in the offseason. And it's like, outside of George Pickens, does anybody in that depth chart scare you?
Yeah, it's a lot of belief in George Pickens. One thing to note on preseason playing time, Josh Allen will play a quarter coming up this weekend. So Mahomes and Allen will play. Bryce Young will not.
You think Steichen's going to tell us on Friday or says,
I need some
more, or need some more time? You'll find out Sunday morning.
I actually think he will. I mean, granted, I thought he would tell us a little bit more yesterday.
I'm almost rooting for him not to, just because at this point, damn it, you've held strong this entire time.
I
you
guess
might as well.
Our show will be over, so who cares, right?
That's kind of what I was thinking. Sorry, JMP.
We'll play the Ryan Kelly interview if you missed that. Outstanding from him. I got some great feedback from people and everything Ryan Kelly has been dealing with here over the last couple of years, and him sharing that with us. We'll play that in a few. Let's do a quick morning check down.
The Morning Checkdown, brought to you by Butler Bulldogs Basketball. Season tickets are on sale now. Order by August 1st for your shot at the best seats in Hinkle Fieldhouse. Visit butlersports.com/buy tickets.
All right, for your morning check down here in the 9 o'clock hour, we'll stick with the Colts sound to lead things off. Nick Cross met with the media. Let's get both of these Nick Cross sounds here. Competing, not competing for the job, even though he is competing in practice. That's how Josh Downs got injured. Here's Nick Cross after practice.
I mean, we playing football, we competing. So, I mean, Josh, my guy, I love that boy to death. So, I mean, we competing. It's unfortunate, and I got to go see what's up with him when I go inside.
All right, so then after that, the follow-up was, hey, if you had it to do over, it sounds like you wouldn't change anything. Nick Cross, here's what he had to say again.
We competing. I mean, never want to get your teammates hurt and everything like that. Like I said, Josh is my guy, so.
And that's basically all we got from Nick Cross as pertains to the injury yesterday to Josh Downs.
10 a.m. start time. Again, spitting rain yesterday. Anthony Richardson, 10 of 16. Maybe a little timing. A couple drops, I thought, from some guys as well. But you are reminded those legs, certainly in that weather, can be quite a weapon. All right, cue up the music. Mark Dankton from a local standpoint yesterday.
Yes.
Gold medal to Sarah Hildebrandt of Penn High School in wrestling. She captures that after a bronze in Tokyo, the 30-year-old capturing gold. Also on the individual front, I guess it was a team competition, but Chloe Dygert from Brownsburg wins another medal. Obviously a very decorated resume at this point in her cycling career. Team pursuit for her. She captures that. I would say the biggest highlight from yesterday was Quincy Hall in that 400-meter dash in the men's race. This dude looks spent.
Do you want to hear it?
Yes.
Mark has it, actually. We haven't played it this morning because of the Josh Downs injury stuff, but it's unbelievable. Let me paint
the picture a little bit. 60, 70 meters to go. He is Cole Hawker never looked spent to me when he made that final run. Quincy Hall looks dead. And, the 400-meter, you do see guys fade, and it just looks like he was fading. And then all of a sudden, the American found another gear.
He's fading badly at this point, Lee. Jareem Richards on the outside. Matthew Hudson-Smith. Karani James. Quincy Hall is coming back. Quincy Hall is digging deep. Quincy Hall is running past all of them. Can he get there? He does. It's gone for the USA. Quincy Hall with the most epic comeback. My goodness.
That's a great call. It's another great call.
That describes it perfectly. I mean, I forget the woman's name there that starts off. I mean, he was fading, and then Lee Diffie kind of builds it up. And if you watch it, that is exactly how it unfolded. So if Noah Lyles wins the 200, that would mean the American sweep in the 100, 200, and 400. I don't know. I can't imagine that's happened too often. I don't know. Maybe Jamaica with Bolt won the 400 a couple times with him sweeping the 100 and 200. But Noah Lyles will go for that coming up at 2:30 today. Obviously, the USA men's basketball team, that'll be appointment television 3 o'clock today against Serbia, 16-point favorite. And Germany, in a road game, is a 5-point favorite over France in the other semifinal.
Wrestling Twitter called Quincy Hall the Undertaker because he looked dead and then he came back to life at the end.
He looked dead.
Now, KB,
I mean,
you know who the Undertaker is, all right? I'm just making sure. Remember when he had the motorcycle thing?
Wasn't born yesterday.
Remember when
American
he became,
Badass.
Remember when he became a Harley rider in the middle of his career? So anyway, there's your Olympic
No
stuff.
Undertaker moves from Sarah Hildebrand yesterday in capturing the gold.
Good for her. Quickly, Major League Baseball, Reds losers 6-4 to Miami. Cubs 8-2 over the Twins. Cardinals 5-2 over the Rays. Indianapolis Indians 4-3. They're winners in Nashville. And obviously, as we talked about a couple minutes ago, we'll see what happens with Brandon Ayuk. Some Pittsburgh people think that could be done here in the next day or so. All right, pop quiz on a Thursday, 317-239-1070. Pop quiz coming up next here on The Fan on this Thursday.
Handle the pressure. Sharpen your pencils. It's time for the Pop Quiz with KB and Andy. Brought to you by Jiffy Lube, Indiana's favorite oil change since 1985.
We're going to pivot a little bit here. That Ryan Kelly interview, tremendous. We want to make sure we've got plenty of time to play that back here for you to round things out. So we'll do that here coming up in a few minutes.
I got something for you here.
Yeah.
I told you this a little bit before the show. People need to go on because I know people here. This relates to the Colts in two ways. There is a piece up, and one of the writers is Jeremy Fowler on ESPN.com on the pressure on Nick Sirianni. Now, I know people around here have two connections to Nick Sirianni. He yelled into the crowd after the firing of Frank Reich, okay, and I'm sure you guys had a fun conversation with that. In the second,
we actually had Nick Sirianni on the show and asked him about that.
Oh, did you?
We did.
Combine time?
At the combine.
Well, good for you. And then the second thing is, obviously, Shane Steichen was the offensive coordinator there for a couple years, and I really think Sirianni is missing he and Gannon. Gannon now, of course, the head coach. We'll see him next week with the Arizona Cardinals. But it's a little bit of a long read. I know people say, well, who cares about the Eagles? But if you like or dislike, and he can be polarizing, Nick Sirianni, he is in some major heat this year with the Eagles. And those guys have a story up on ESPN.com. Like I said, Jeremy Fowler was one of the writers to where, last year, Sirianni and Hurts did not like each other. Leaders on the team thought Sirianni was a clown. They didn't think he had, Ben Johnson, the OC there, along with Jalen Hurts. They've known each other all the way back to Hurts being in high school. They didn't think that Sirianni had the X's and O's chops to be an NFL head coach. Hurts, even this training camp, has said some odd things. So something worth watching. When you talk about the value of a great coordinator, one reason why I like Shane Steichen is you could tell his creativity those 2 years with the Philadelphia Eagles was evident, and they're really missing him. They were 10-1 at one point last year, and they fell apart. They didn't average 20 points the last month and a half of the season, got blown out in the playoffs, lost to the Giants in Week 18. They were a complete mess. So it's a good read. I know fans around here don't mind seeing Nick Sirianni take a little bit of heat.
If you missed it to Ryan Kelly, we'll play that here to round it out.
It's the Wake Up Call with KB and Andy on 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
All right, there we go. 14 minutes with Ryan Kelly. You miss any of that, 1075thefan.com. I really enjoyed that conversation.
Yeah, that was
I did. He's fantastic.
From Ryan, so thank you to that. 10 a.m. tomorrow, final day at Grand Park for us.
Let's get it going. Jake coming up. Jake and Jimmy at noon. JMV at 3 o'clock. Have a good afternoon on The Fan.